All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Excess Succeed. This is Gearface. I'm joined today by Coronair. Coronair, thank you so much again for hanging out with me today. Really excited to talk to you.
Happy to be here as always. Your projects are very cool.
Oh, awesome. We are today we are talking a little bit about Taisei and the Doulahan for when he loses his head later on. Super excited to learn about this guy. I know in my particular addition to this show is that I know very little about these characters, so I get to have very genuine reactions. It'll be fun. And I understand that Coronair is the person to talk to about this guy. Couple disclaimers before we get started. As always, number one, we're going to be talking about playing to win on this show. That is slightly complicated by the fact that Taisei, like all of the season 2 characters, has rotated out of competitive play. So if you are playing Taisei to win in a tournament, you're probably playing in a pretty specific tournament. That doesn't mean that you can't play him for fun at your kitchen table and use the stuff that we teach you to beat your friends. But tournament play with Taisei is a little bit odd because of that. That isn't the only way to play Exceed. You can just play Exceed for fun. I encourage you to. It's a good time. You should do it. The other and if the lines of play we describe aren't fun to you, please don't play that way. Play the way that you do find fun. The other thing that we usually say at the start of the show is that we tend to be pretty prescriptive about strategy. These are the rules to Coronair's strategy with Taisei. They don't have to be your rules. Exceed's not a solved game. We don't know everything about these characters. That said, I think and Coronair, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, if there was going to be a season of Exceed that people really knew about, I get the sense that it's Seventh Cross. I think that these characters were in competitive play for quite a long time, and people kind of figured them out pretty well. They know how they work very, very deeply. Is that true?
Yeah, I would absolutely say so. When Exceed took off, I think season 2 was really in the big thing, and it's the season that is exclusive at this point to Exceed, seeing as the board game that this series is from isn't out yet and is from the same company.
Right. So I always say take everything with a grain of salt. Still take everything with a grain of salt about what we're going to say. If we misrepresent something, if you play differently, that's totally fine. It doesn't mean we're right, you're wrong. But these characters have a very sort of entrenched meta. They might not be the meta that we're used to up in modern day Exceed. They might be doing some things a little bit differently back here. But yeah, all that said, all that bookkeeping aside, Coronair, please tell me a little bit about Taisei.
So, Taisei, the Doulahan, he is, I would say he's very much a feast or famine kind of guy. He is a lot of risk and a lot of reward. And it's all about manipulating the numbers to be just right to hit breakpoints. And knowing what those breakpoints are and how to abuse them with having a little bit of action compression and changing up your own stats. Okay. So the first thing that you'll notice about Taisei when you read him, because I think this is core to his entire gimmick, is, and the first thing everybody notices when they go to play against him, whether or not they know him very well or they're someone who's new to Taisei and is just seeing him for the first time and kind of skim things, is that he starts at 15 life.
Yeah, we should probably, just to make it authentic here. So we got,
you gotta start down here.
15 life character off the bat. Okay.
So if you're playing Taisei, you cannot be afraid of having living at low life. And if you are, just get used to it. It's fine.
Okay. So now, does that sort of mean that he's going to be doing kind of like a rush down, here for a good time, not for a long time kind of play style, or does he have some ability to sustain himself beyond that 15 life?
So I like to think of him. I don't like to think of him, but I think the most apt comparison is that he is a cockroach. You don't kill him till he's actually dead. More so than any other character I've played. Taisei can be at 1 life and be nigh as unkillable at Taisei at 15 life. So he does have a couple different sustain methods. Like your kit has several ways to get life back, as well as when you exceed over onto your other side, you do get some life back as well.
Okay.
So he has several different life sustaining methods. So despite the fact that you start at 15, you have over the course of the game, you may cumulatively get more life than even than flat 30, although that doesn't happen super often.
Okay, so as life totals kind of will fall and refill and fall and refill, I'm probably going to be more like a more standard character. Just at the beginning of the game, I I don't I can die in a couple hits if I don't have my engine set up. Is that kind of how I should be thinking about it?
For most of the game, you can die in a couple hits, actually.
Okay,
So for most of the game, Taisei tends to live at 6-1. That's where he is the strongest, and that's where you will often find yourself. So he is a character where he can get really, really strong, but you can mess up and die in one hit, and that's something that you kind of gotta be okay with when you're playing with him. That sometimes it just happens, but also being at low life isn't always a bad thing if you know what you're doing.
okay,
It's okay not to, you can be scared of it, but don't be too wary. It's definitely something that Taisei taught me playing, is that don't take the fact that you're at low life meaning that you're out, because that's just, it's not the case for anyone, but especially not for him.
sure. The only point of life that matters is the last one.
It's the
Sometimes,
last one,
yeah.
100%.
Okay,
You're
uh,
you're not dead until you die.
until you're
And
dead,
sometimes,
dead. Okay,
yeah, and sometimes that's when you die twice.
okay, fair enough.
So
All right, so Taisei is going to stick around a little bit longer than I think, but if I screw up, the game's going to be over pretty fast.
yes.
Gotcha.
So the reason for this is, I think the first place you start is like examining his UA. I think that's kind of gonna guide you for the rest of your kit. Um, is his ability is that his life begins at half its maximum. And if you reach 0, you may instead exceed. So you don't need to take the action to do that unless you're doing it manually. If you would die, you can exceed instead if you have the cost. So
Okay.
it's very important early game to get yourself up to a place where you are able to exceed if you die, because then you hit a little bit of stability at that point.
Okay.
Before you get either the gauge or the gauge equivalent of what you need in transforms, when you die, you're dead. But once you have either 2 transforms in the gauge, or 5 gauge, or 3 transforms, whatever combination of things, his transforms giving him, like everybody else, 2 off the cost, and his exceed costing 5. You'll die the first time you die, but once you get that, you will flip over automatically when you hit 0. An
Okay.
important thing to note about this is when you hit 0 and you die, you may exceed. When you exceed, you automatically either gain 10 life. So if you are not dead and you choose to exceed, you can go higher than whatever you're at, or set your life to 10. This also can take place during a strike. So if you were to die during a strike, the strike does not end, but the damage does not splash over. So if I'm at 1 life, per se, and I took 10 damage, I will die and then go to 10.
Okay.
The damage does not splash over.
So they hit you with Shadow of Death. They hit you for 15 damage. You went to negative 14, and you're like, cool, set my life to 10. You wasted 14 damage of that attack.
Correct. You
Okay.
can use it to soak up a giant attack by dying.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Do you ever find yourself exceeding early, just with the action, or is it more typical for Taisei to build up that stability and then just fight and fight and fight, and then flip kind of as a natural process of getting killed?
It depends on how you like to play him. So personally, I never flip on purpose.
Okay.
Except for if I'm pulling one silly move, which I'll talk about later.
Okay.
But if I'm not pulling this one specific move, I personally will never flip over unless my opponent forces me to. I just prefer the front side of him. But from what I know about my line of play with him, and from other people who I know who enjoy Taisei, there's kind of two ways you can go about it. There's a more aggressive way and a more defensive way. A lot of, from what I've heard, the more defensive players flip over sometimes on purpose to the back, or may prefer the backside. I tend to pretty much universally prefer the front side.
Okay.
So depends on what you want, but I would not say he's a character that just naturally it's the move to exceed once you're comfortable and you want to do it.
Okay.
It's nice to have that out, and also the abilities are horizontal rather than vertical.
Oh, sure, and that's kind of common of for people who are coming into this sort of like I was with season 2 already having rotated out, this may be a new concept for you, but like seventh cross characters in general, when they exceed, it isn't always like a flat upgrade, right? Like sometimes a season 2 character will they can exceed too early. They can mess their engine up by trying to cash out too early. They're more like they're more like a mode shift than a direct like now you have the same thing but +2 power or something upgrade, right?
Correct. That is
Okay.
correct. And for
Okay.
him specifically, I actually think the front side is stronger, but that's because it suits the way I like to play him better.
Okay. So for your line of play at least, I should be thinking about preserving my front side as best I can rather than rushing my exceed mode. My exceed mode is what will happen if they play really well. If my opponent
Correct.
plays really well and makes me exceed.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, you do want to rush being able to exceed. A, for safety reasons, and B, because usually if the things that get you to the state where you can exceed are the things that are going to get you to being set up to kick some ass.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Um,
Yeah, because
so,
transforms are going to be useful for things other than just taking gauge cost off of your exceed mode. You'll want those anyway, so you might as well get them.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. But yes, so you are at 15 life. You can exceed for +10 or set to 10 if you your choice which one, and if you die, presumably you're going to be set to 10.
Yep.
That does not end the strike. So you excess damage doesn't splash over. You also get to finish your strike. So if you're not stunned or whatever else other means would normally stop you from striking back, you can actually hit them back even if you die. Dying will not stop you from
Yeah.
killing them.
I like that like stun immunity is not the same as death immunity. That normally matters for characters, but also if you die, it doesn't mean you're stunned. You still get to punch back if you're Taisei. That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So really quick before we continue with the character abilities, just one more question about like how to exceed and when. Um
Absolutely.
so let's say we're in a situation where like I have like one I don't have all my transforms yet and I'm sitting on a little bit of gauge. And obviously I can use gauge for ultras. I can use gauge for moving and changing cards and all that stuff. When I'm Taisei, if I don't have the ability to exceed at 0 gauge, um, with all my transforms in play, am I doing something particularly unsafe by like spending cards from gauge to change cards or move or something? Do I need to always make sure at any moment that I can exceed if I have to? Or is there like a certain life threshold that you start really caring about that kind of safety?
So yes, no, it is more dangerous than most things to spend gauge when you do not have free exceed, because you are putting yourself into lethal. You're basically putting yourself into a 10 hit point differential version of lethal as well. Especially because rather than hit points, I like to think of things for him in strikes, because he's a one strike you're dead kind of guy sometimes.
Okay.
Uh, so it is more dangerous than normal to take out cards from your gauge to play them as other things, either changing cards or to play ultras. That being said, I don't actually think that's always a bad idea. He's about risks, and if you need to do it, then you do it. A lot of the times, not doing if you are going too safe, you'll just die anyway, and you won't have a setup or you won't have a thing. So it is more risky than most people. It's very not most people. I won't give statistics, but then a lot of characters to use your gauge. So I would not use it frivolously at all. But if you think using it will win you a very important strike or get you where you need to be, don't be afraid to do it.
Okay.
I just would not use it frivolously and make sure that you know that it's going to give you value and you have a plan for it.
Okay.
Versus other people where you can kind of spend your gauge to change cards or move around without caring about it too much. He cares a lot, but that doesn't always mean it's a bad move. Because
Right.
like a well-timed nightmare tears can completely turn the game around.
Right. Okay. So and like yeah, that threshold of safety moves over the course of the game. Like if I have both of these transforms down already in play, oops. Whoa. Come on, tabletop simulator. I got both of these in play already. The amount of safety that I actually need is what, like 1 or 2 gauge, right? It's 1 gauge at that point that I'm trying to preserve, so that I can exceed because I've reduced
Correct.
my gauge cost by 4. So the more I'm set up, the uh, the less uh, the less strict I need to be with my gauge. It seems like.
Absolutely. The
Okay.
more you get your transforms out, the more free your gauge becomes.
Okay. Cool. Gotcha. All right. Yeah. And please continue with the character ability breakdown. Sorry for that interlude.
No, it's good. It's important. Where was I? Ah, yes, you don't. Dying doesn't stop you from striking back. A very important note, in case you think you're going to die or plan on dying,
Yep.
and or killing yourself. A move that has been done on multiple occasions. Uh,
Really? Okay. Now I'm interested.
yeah, he's the only guy who's ever murdered himself on purpose. I think cutting off his own head, and as the backside depicts, is a perfect encapsulation of
Oh, see,
exactly what you're
it
kind of doing.
it never occurred to me that this wound on the Dullahan side was self-inflicted, but that makes total sense actually.
That's
Okay.
how I read it, at least.
That's fair, to be honest with you. He seems like the kind of guy who would. Okay. So I could conceivably just kill myself in the middle of a strike and be fine with it if I was going for my exceed side.
Yeah, well, yeah, very much so.
Okay, okay.
Um, what yes, so that's the main gist of how to exceed and when you exceed. I like to save it for making them have to duke out a strike and possibly losing value in that transformation moment, and or being able to flip when I want to on command, rather than using it early. But if you personally think it's better, or you like the backside and or need what it gives you more than the front side, you can flip early if you want to. I just like having that. It's both a safety button because you live so low, that they can strike you over and you'll be fine. Uh, and also the ability to change when you want to, because you lose that once you flip, you can't go back.
Sure, sure. Okay. So having access to both sides. Do you find yourself typically when you're playing Taisei being forced to exceed? Like, is it reasonable in a day of exceed? Are you frequently winning games exclusively on front side, or are you often forced to flip when you're up against kind of like comparable opponents to your skill level?
It depends. I find that people can definitely force you to flip over. For me personally, I tend to I tend to do a lot better on the front than I do in the back. So usually I've murdered them on the front before I get to the back, or we don't spend that much time over here. But
Okay.
yeah, I would find a good opponent can typically towards the end of the game get you to
Okay.
flip over.
And so your hope then as a front side Taisei player is that you have done enough damage on front side that them flipping you over is going to not matter in the long run.
You want to either yeah, you want to have done enough damage that you can close out the game relatively easily once you're flipped over,
Okay.
or the cost to them for making you flip was too big. So you're trying to get the most value of you that you can out of the front before they force you onto the back. I would not expect to stay on the front the whole time with an equal opponent. They will make you flip. People can get you, because especially because it's so easy to they don't need to get you 3 times. They need to get you once.
Once, right.
So don't expect a strong opponent not to make you flip. What you want to do is get a lot of value out of it. Don't be scared of it happening, as long as you can get something out of it.
Okay. Sounds great.
To be more set up. So the ability in and of itself, not necessarily the flip, is for the front side Taisei. You can, when you set your attack, and now this is initiate or response, so you don't have to be the initiator. When you set your attack, you can spend up to 2 life for +1 power each. So your life as Taisei is a resource. You are, as it is for everybody when choosing to take damage for other benefits, but for him, quite literally, you are spending life for more power. So you are going to be active. In addition to starting at 15, you're going to be eating yourself alive.
Okay. So high risk, high reward indeed then. But at the same time, having basically on-demand access to +2 power is actually pretty crazy for an
It's
Exceed
really
character.
crazy.
That doesn't happen very often.
And you can put it on anything that you're playing. So that +2 power is It's more, I think the key thing to think about it is rather than as more damage you're dealing to the opponent to like whittle them down faster, it's much more important as a breaking point to stun their strikes. Or to threaten them to stun their strikes. Because what you want to do is you can make attacks that would not normally break other things now actually break them. So that they can't just play slow and hit you back. You want to be breaking their moves instead.
Okay, sure. Because I mean, otherwise, if you don't do that, if I play, I don't know, hold on, if I play assault into your sweep and I spent +2 power and did +2 damage to myself, and did 2 damage to myself, I have like no value has actually changed hands at that point because we both got gauge. I hit you harder, but you hit me harder too. I just did some of it to myself, right?
Correct. And it's worse for you because you don't have the life for that. You can't trade. You have to win.
You have to win clean.
You're
Okay,
good
so
at neutral, but you can't just trade back and forth with someone without making any headway for either of you because they have 30 life and you have
you
15
have
life.
15. Sure. Okay. But if I can nudge that up, if I do the same thing, I don't know, with range 4 dive into your wild swung sweep or something. Cool.
Mhm.
I'm hitting for 7 and taking 0 back, but kind of taking 2 back because I spent some life on myself. But now I've gotten gauge you haven't. I've cleanly won that strike. That's what I need to be looking for as Taisei.
Correct. That is
Okay.
exactly that's a really good example here with the differences between these two. Technically, you are doing the same amount of damage difference because you're doing +2 on both of these things. But if you are, and presuming you're not jumping the sweep as a dive,
Right.
But for the extra 2 on assault, you're not breaking the sweep, so it is not giving you, without other components of his kit online, at least, it's not giving you enough value to necessarily be worth doing. But for the dive, it is because you break it. So you are looking for those breakpoints of when can I turn an attack that loses into an attack that wins, and trying to predict what attacks they are playing in order to pick the right things to boost.
Okay. And I'm sure that there's a huge amount of nuance to how exactly and when exactly you use this because you can be bluffing. You can like there's so many components into what my opponent has, what my opponent has live. Um, how often? And I'm sure like some of these cards are not like 2 is not going to hit a meaningful breakpoint with +2 power on it. For example, on Anathema Surge, like I'm sure that there is a huge amount of variability in how often I'm using this ability, but any guidance on how to spend life? Like, is this something that you're doing more often than I think you are? Is this
I do
just
it frequently, very
okay?
frequently.
Okay,
Um, so in addition to the fact that you don't want to do it if you don't think you're going to change the outcome of the strike, oftentimes, but there are a lot of things if you can look at the opponent's kit and kind of understand it and what's left. You really want to keep a good mind of what's left of like how to break. The other thing that you can do with it is +2 power doesn't always change the breakpoint. It might for some moves, especially ones that aren't used to getting it. But +3 power will is definitely does so. So anything EX plus the front side adds 3, and that will start changing. So like 2 power now will break a lot of mid speeds.
sure. There's
Guard with
plenty.
a +3.
Our good friend, the training dummy Ryu here, has a couple of very relevant 4 guard mid speeds for melee range. He's got Donkey Kick and Tatsu. 4 guard is like that's probably
The
safe enough,
average.
right? I can play that. Oh no, I can't play that because now you've stunned me with an on curve thing and
Mm-hmm.
gotten other stuff out of it in the process. Okay, so EXs um fierce, I imagine, like any sort of
Yeah.
other places where I'm getting bonus power or something is going to make is going to be a force multiplier.
Correct. I think this is adding into this, but I think it's very relevant to note to talk about the transforms now while we're talking about this ability because they're all really linked into each other.
Okay.
So, for example, another place where you get that +1 power is his Edge of Death transform. So if you are at 6 or less life, which is why I say that's where you live your entire game, you have +1 power. So all of a sudden you have +3 power
All the time.
on all the
So
time on
so
nigh everything.
so
So that
this
assault would also beat
yeah
that sweep.
this exact same situation that I described a second ago. Now I've got an on curve way to stun sweep, which is messed up
Correct.
actually.
Yeah. Um, so you want to pay attention to the 2, but also to the 3 as well,
Okay.
because there's several different methods of getting you there. Either having that transform and being in the life threshold, and you'll probably live most of your life in that life threshold.
Okay.
Um, or and if you're not, you can slowly get yourself there by eating your own face. Um,
Right. Sure. If they just refuse to hit me to get me to minus to get me to 6 or less life, I can do it myself.
I can do, yeah, you can do
Yeah.
it
All
yourself.
right. Cool. Bill. So if you're really worried about living your life, living at low life, as Taisei, just think of it in terms of like, cool. Every time you use your ability, you're getting closer to having Edge of Death in play for your really low
Absolutely.
life. Awesome. All right.
For forever.
That's a
If you're
good
really
mindset.
worried about living at low life and you're deeply uncomfortable playing a character that's at 6 life or less, either you should play him and break that a habit out of you, or you should not play this character because you will. That's where you live.
Right. And yeah, and that it's going to be too scary. Okay. All right. Cool. So that's the plan then. Is I'm going to be spending for power specifically to hit certain breakpoints or to threaten hitting certain breakpoints, and using whatever other kind of bonuses I can get on top of it to make that more feasible.
Correct. The other thing is as well with, and this I think these 2 are his more important transforms. Um, I think Dust to Dust is the most important one personally. Especially early, like Anathema Surge can be stronger once you're more set up, but especially front side and early. Oh, Dust to Dust killer. So another important thing when you think about spending life is the Dust to Dust transform Demon Heart. It's when you spend life, you put that many counters on this card. For each counter in this card, you have +1 armor, and you remove all counters when the strike ends. So it makes your life costs, if you do get hit back, essentially neutral for
Okay.
paying for your ability,
Okay. So I'm I'm
because you
I'm
pay
getting
to power
now
it and you get the armor.
now I'm getting power anyway from life, but because I'm spending life, I'm also getting armor, and that would nullify they're hitting me for 2 less damage, and I took 2 more damage, so it evens out.
Correct.
Um, does
So
that?
you can go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna ask. So does that mean once you have that in play, do you sometimes now just throw plus 2 power on things for value, or are you still specifically trying to stun things? Because now uh if I have Demon Heart in play and I put +2 power on my assault into my opponent's sweep, um, now I'm actually trading better than I would have been just with my character ability, because now I actually am taking less damage. Or is it that I still have so little life in the first place that I really want to be stunning things cleanly?
It's certainly more of a thought than if you know you can break, I will just do it. If it's not a break, I will do it quite frequently, but it's not an automatic move. On defense, oftentimes when I think I'm going to be getting hit, or it's inevitable that I'll be getting hit back because it's more likely if they're striking into you, that you don't have a perfect counter in mind.
Right.
I'll often throw it because you know you're going to get hit, and therefore it's going to be life neutral. So anytime you know you're going to get hit back, either you don't think you can break and you want to throw the attack anyway for whatever reason, because sometimes you just do. Um, you, not every strike you throw has to be a perfect strike. But if I know I'm going to get hit back, either because I'm a defending player and I think that's most likely what's happening, or I know they're going to hit me before I go and I want to be able to tank through something to do bigger, I will use the armor as, hey, this is just plus value for me because they're going to hit my armor. So it's life I would have lost anyway, but now I get to hit them harder. Um, but you need to keep in mind the thing you need to keep in mind that isn't making this an instant A, if you don't think they're going to hit you back, um, even though you're not using it for like you don't need the power for the breakpoint, um, you don't necessarily need to throw that. So like, and where your life is at, because your life is a resource and you should be spending it as one, but you do need to keep in mind how much life you have. So if you are going from, for instance, 3 life to 1 life, you are now no longer able to spend life to use your ability immediately. Now you
Sure.
have ways to get that life back to like turn that back online. But you do need to be cognizant that it is not an infinite resource.
Right.
So like it can be just free value a lot of the time. But sometimes even if it's free value, it will put you into a life position where you are not able to use a setup that would be better or that you need.
Okay, so plan a little bit ahead. This is not non-lethal damage. I can just kill myself by doing this.
Correct.
So when I'm at 1 life, I don't have the ability to do it at all anymore. All right. So yeah, that is all important considerations, but having this transform online lets me play for value rather than just play strictly for stunning all the time, which seems important.
Correct.
Um, and as I guess, before we actually talk about the attacks themselves, these are
Yeah,
like,
most of the gun transforms here.
yeah, these are your kind of engine pieces. So if I have this and I have this, I have potentially at 6 or less life +2 power. I'm sorry, +3 power, +2 armor on every strike I'm making.
Yes.
All right, that's
Which is gross.
that's a lot of stuff for 2 life. Yeah, I would pay that price. Okay, that's really scary. Um,
Absolutely.
are these transforms important enough to my game plan that I can't risk missing with them? I'm noticing that these attacks are not super hard to hit with. Anathema Surge and Dust to Dust. Um, should I be EX transforming these and not throwing them as attacks because those transforms are that important?
Uh, Maybe, yeah. They are straight up just that important. They are cards that are not hard to get out as strikes because they're on curve. So if they have no options that beat you, um, they have no options that beat you, you can do it. But I would never throw them when you're not sure because they are just that important. They
Sure.
are critical to how he plays the game, especially Dust to Dust.
Okay.
Both in terms of what they do for his engine, he really, really needs them. But also, you need your transforms to be able to exceed. So they
Right.
are critical for both his engine and for living.
Right.
So I would, if you have 2 of them, sometimes I'll throw it as an EX or something. But EX transforming is just, instead of using the attack, even if you think you'll probably get it, is not a bad idea because
Right.
they are so important.
So I look at this and I'm like, cool, on curve, cross hits all the time. That's fine. I can do this. But if my opponent has a DP or EX, every character has EX cross. Every character has EX grasp. They could, if I'm not sure, they could stun me out of these. I could whiff with these. Somebody's got a speed dodge. Like, check what your opponent has before you throw these because you need them. It sounds like.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I do throw them as attacks frequently, but you need to check. You cannot throw these frivolously. They are too important to your kit. If you don't get these during the course of the game is going to go poorly for you, most likely.
Okay, sounds good. And should we also cover the last of your transforms while we're talking about these?
Yes. So Ashen Claws. Its transform is Deathless. It is good, and I like it. It is not as vital as the other 2. You have your normal attacks have hit gain 1 life, so it is a passive sustaining of yourself, and essentially fueling your ability to keep using your life into your abilities by giving you extra life regen.
Right. Okay. All right. So yeah, I guess I could think of this as I hit gain 1 life or hit gain 1 power later because I'll
Yes.
probably use that for my ability. Okay. So it's just a bank that I'm going to build up.
Yeah, it's a bank that you're building, and you can pay it right back into what you're doing. You can think of it essentially as one off of what you're spending later, or what you just spent in that strike. If you know you can make that strike hit now, so not vital to actually being able to function, but very nice.
Okay.
And more importantly, free exceed. Your gauge is now unlocked. You've unlocked your
anything.
entire gauge bar.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And that, because like every 7th cross character appreciates that, but I really, really need the safety of being able to exceed at any point. So especially if I'm doing edge of death shenanigans, I could die so fast.
You could die so fast.
Yeah. So I need to make sure that I've got the gauge, and now I can do it with 0.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want your transform, you want Deathless. I find myself more than wanting Deathless specifically early game, wanting a transform on the board for making exceeding easier, and then I usually want Deathless.
Okay.
So it's not as heartbreaking if you miss an Ashen Claws, although still bad. But not as heartbreaking as if one of these 2 is you throw it and you missed it, and you don't see the other copy, and you have no other way. You have access to your other ways of getting it, and or if it gets parried out of your hand. because if you are not afraid of getting parried, fish for these. You want them so bad. But if you are, it might be worth, especially if you know your opponent is going to try and get that from you immediately. They're so valuable that you need to play around not losing them.
Right. Okay. And you know these are crucial engine components for you. Don't whiff with them. This less so. This is almost like it sounds like how you're talking about it. Like if this transform was completely blank and just gave you a gauge rebate on exceeding, it would be almost as valuable. Like the hit gain 1 life is cool, but really this is your third transform. This is to make your exceed mode free. These are your like
these are the more important ones. It's still a really good transform, especially in isolation. It's still very nice, but it's not something that I think is going to lose me the game of missing it.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, cool. So all of these have kind of the standard 7th cross tension of like, oh, you might not want to hit with these. You might want to try to throw them because they do have these important things on them. Should we get into the kit itself, or is there other stuff that we want to talk about the character or the game plan first?
I think another thing to note, I guess if we're on the transforms, is that when you exceed, the Edge of Death Anathema Surges transform has a secondary effect. So it's +1 power when you are 6 lives or left on front side, but it is +1 power and +1 speed when you're on the back side, which is very strong.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So front side, when you are 6 or left, you have the option of being +3 power, +2 armor. Or just +1 power if you're not spending the life. Backside, you are at +1 power, +1 speed. And you can use other shenanigans to get extra armor through Dust to Dust, but your regular on command is going to be that +1 power, +1 speed, 6 or less.
Oh, sure, because I don't have the ability, like, so for the Magic the Gathering players out there, this is you talk about like a sink, right, or an outlet. This is my life outlet, and these are the things that care about me spending life. I don't have this anymore when I flip.
Yeah, you have a different outlet.
Okay, so I don't have the ability to have +3 power anymore because I'm not spending 2 life a strike. We actually haven't even talked about the Dullahan's ability yet because it's less important to your game plan. Should we go over this, or should we talk about it later?
I think let's talk about it when we get to the ultras. Now, it is still important, and it's still strong. It's just 2 different styles. So personally, I'm a big fan of calculating breakpoints and trying to be very precise. So that's why I like the front.
Yep.
But the back is equally as good, especially because of that +1 speed. If not better, if you like that style of doing things. But I think its real power will come into play once we start talking about the ultras. So I could talk about it now, but I think maybe getting back to it once I have examples of what you can do with it might be better.
Sure, no problem.
I just wanted to note that you'll get an extra speed on the back. Almost talking about them as 2 entirely different game plans might be easier. This is the front side plan, and then you have back side plan.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. And it sounds like what front side plan is use your attacks, get your transforms, spend life to hit important breakpoints, to win cleanly when you can and outvalue your opponent.
Yes, outvaluing and making clean wins when you can by using your ability to change your numbers on command.
Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Let's get into the kit itself then. Where do we want to start?
So I'm gonna put these back over here. I think we can start with. Do we want to start with openers, or do we want to start with individual attacks? What would you prefer?
Oh, let's do openers. I'm into that.
Okay, cool. So you have 2 different styles of openers. You can, if you don't think your opponent will parry them out of your hands, hard mull for your transforms. You do that. You want them really badly. You want them in your hand. If you do think they know better and will parry them out of your hand, that is a different story. You may either not want to hold them for them or even put them back on purpose. Now, putting them back on purpose is not as easy of an option as some other Season 2 characters who, despite really needing their transforms, can take a little bit more time to get them, and therefore put them back in the deck to not get parried out of your hand.
Right, because they don't start with 15 life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you need to go.
you kind of need them now, right?
A handful of all normals starting on Taisei is brutal. So you kind of need them. So you may want to shuffle some things back in, especially possibly like the stronger ones if you think they're just going to smack it immediately if they get their parries. But it's not an auto do just because shuffling them back in means you may never get them for a little while. So
Sure,
deciding what you want to keep and what you want to put away for transforms is going to be based on what you think they're going to do. And just like what options you get in the beginning, whether or not you draw into any of them, or if you want to plan on keeping sort of an Ashen Clause or an Anathema Surge over a Dust to Dust, if they know Dust to Dust is the crucial piece.
right. And
But if
it seems like of the two that we really care about, pretending that parry doesn't exist. I'm fighting a season 6 character or something. Demon Heart is useful now, and Edge of Death is not useful until I'm at 6 or fewer life. Would I usually be mulliganing for Dust to Dust?
yes,
All
in an
other things
ideal
being
world
equal,
where you're not worried about getting smacked, Dust to Dust is what I'm looking for, and then Anathema Surge.
makes sense. Okay,
Both really good. This is good forever and now. This one is good when you get to 6, which is going to be very fast, but not in the first strike.
right.
And the other thing you are looking for is your Chaos Scissors. Because your boost on your Chaos Scissors, actually, I don't know why I'm turning that to you. Your boost on your Chaos Scissors is also in a way you can transform your cards. So at the boost, you can spend 3 life to transform a card from your hand or your deck. So you can pay it and you have a transform now. So you're also looking for your Chaos Scissors because that's a free transform too. And it's a free transform of your choosing. So you can scry for whichever one you need, meaning whichever one you didn't get, or Dust to Dust. Hey, it's right there. But whatever one you really want, you can get it with Chaos Scissors if you open to a Chaos Scissors and they don't hit that out of your hand. That's also a thing to keep in mind when you consider the parry meta, because they can try and parry your transforms directly, or they can try and parry your Chaos Scissors. So you could try and put back your transforms so they don't get smacked, but if they try and smack out a Dust Dust, it means they're not going to smack out Chaos Scissors, and then you can use your other copy of Dust to Dust from your deck, or if it's still in your hand.
Right.
So they don't have an easy option, because even if they know what's your best one or what one they think you want, you essentially have 2 things they would need to smack, which is the card itself and the Chaos Scissors.
And the thing that enables it. Okay, so I can probably make myself safe from a parry with like a little bit of luck and some hand management early on, because I do have the ability to tutor for a parry, to scry for a parry, or to scry for a transform rather. But I still do need to think about like, well, what is my opponent going to try to be sniping out of my hand here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think they'll go for the actual card or for the Chaos Scissors in and of itself?
Right.
Sometimes I'll just go for both, because if I get both and they do one, I can then use the other one.
Sure, yeah. Then you have the other one, and like it seems like you would prefer to EX transform because you probably don't want to waste the 3 life.
Yeah. I mean, 3 life for a transform, I don't mind.
Oh, sure,
It's a
yeah.
resource and I'm spending it. I have no fear going to 12.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, cool.
But yeah, if you're able to EX it, then that's guaranteed as well. I would, if you're using the Chaos Scissors, boost Demon Blood to transform. I think this is pretty obvious, but if you have it in your deck, grab it from your deck rather than pulling the one from your hand.
Oh, sure, yeah. You might as well just keep the one in your hand for using as an attack or force or something. It's a resource, you can spend it.
Yeah. I think something to keep in mind as well is that I usually will go for Dust to Dust first. However, if I have Dust to Dust in hand or an EX copy in hand, you may want to use that Chaos Scissors to get something else. Just especially versus skilled opponents, keep in mind that if you open with a Chaos Scissors instead of opening with whatever way you're getting your Dust to Dust, and you scry for something that's not Dust to Dust, you're telling on yourself a little bit.
Oh, they'll assume that you have it. Sure, you're like, awesome. I put down Edge of Death, and they're like, cool, parry Dust to Dust.
Yeah, cool. But that's the other one. You've got it somewhere. You must have this if you're not grabbing it.
Okay.
So you can either pull, even if you have a copy, still pull it from your deck anyway, if the other copy's in your deck, or pull it from your hand if you really want to. Or you can act as if you don't have either of them, or you only have like one copy, and then try and either EX transform it or play out getting it on the board through setting up an attack, and then use your Chaos Scissors. That way, you're not going to be telling on yourself,
Yeah,
and you can probably get 2 of them.
you're not giving away any information that way, but you are delaying your game plan a little bit.
Correct. That
Okay,
is the thing, is you're risking both a delay and an accidental, this got smacked out of my hand now.
Okay. It's interesting because that reads on the face of it as being like the cautious play, but it's actually kind of greedy to delay.
It is greedy.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. So you do kind of need to balance what you need now versus what you think you can get away with.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes greed is good, but you need to feel that up because it will make it harder to do other things, but you might be able to get all of your stuff all at once.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's what you're looking for is transforms and chaos scissors in an ideal world, theoretically. Other things that you can do as an opener, though, in regards to attacks, rather than what you were looking for combo pieces or like engine pieces, is I like the boost on Bloodthirst. So he just likes his specials and ultras, but I like throwing a Bloodthirst out first if I'm not doing other things a lot of the time, because Taisei's favorite range is 2. So while that will put you at 1, it will close the gap. He is not incapable of range, but he's definitely not a ranged guy. Okay. So if you're playing somebody who's really good at 1 or really better close than you are, maybe don't do this. But closing the gap so that you have access to playing your cards, especially your transform cards, I find is often quite useful. Especially because before close 3 is
that's really
hard
strong
to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, like, sure, I will throw out defensive focus at range 4 that underspeeds your sweep. I'll throw out radically above curve assault or grasp or cross. Like, that's messed up. That's a ton of flexibility from opening positions.
It's both a ton of flexibility from opening positions, but this is also giving you a different kind of mix-up, because the obvious flag for what this is either Dust to Dust or Anathema Surge, because they're so fast and they're both going to hit, and you want them, and you want them bad enough that, hey, running in and taking a smack, running in and getting hit to get these to go, especially because Anathema Surge gives you +3 armor after, so it might be worth it. I've done it, right? Getting set up, your life is a resource, even when you're not paying it as a cost. So taking a hit to get your thing online, not a bad move necessarily.
Right.
So these are like the obvious calls because they are getting your transforms online. You can almost guarantee yourself these oftentimes because they are cross speed or higher, and Dust to Dust is EX cross speed or higher. So getting out of the way is incredibly hard or undoable for Dust to Dust, and very hard for Anathema Surge when you have this online. So it's really hard to dodge with these, so these are an obvious thought process. That being said, it's not... You can do it, you don't have to do it. The other alternative of the mix-up between playing one of these two, which is a really easy thought process, is something that people don't... It's not always out of the thought process, but what you're threatening them with is you can throw a sweep and add 2 power, and now it breaks focus.
Oh, yeah.
You can throw an 8 power sweep that breaks focus from range 4. So if they go faster, they miss unless it is a long range move. And if they go slow and chonky because they know you'll end up next to them, you just break it.
And because,
or you're not there yet.
And because they're thinking, all right, cool, I can at least punish them for playing Anathema Surge or Dust to Dust, because those are going to land right next to me. I can hit them with something big. I can mitigate my damage. Oh no, Correct. That's 8 damage that I just took.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a long-term plan mix-up and also a short-term payout mix-up with Grave Ambitions.
Correct. So if they know better, they can, if they're trying to punish you or just get their value's worth out of these two, which, a lot of life damage early and a card out of your hand, if it's a sweep, from these is very costly. But if they're trying to punish you, they open themselves up to getting 8 power sweep and broken. and that's brutal.
Yeah,
So they have to
that's
keep in mind the two different things.
all right. That's really scary. It also this just occurred to me to ask actually. So I'm noticing that Anathema Surge has hit gain 2 life on it. And I know that you've mentioned that that Taisei has some life gain abilities.
Mhm.
Um, Taisei's maximum life conceivably, like how do I put this? It he has 15 life at the start. Does that mean that he has a regular sized life bar, but it starts half full? So if I hit with Anathema Surge on turn 1 somehow, uh,
Correct.
my life goes up to
Yes,
17.
you can go over 15.
Cool.
You are
Okay.
not limited to 15 forever. I have gone over 15 before. It's not a land where you typically live, but you can absolutely have more life than you
Okay.
started with.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Just wanted to clarify that. All right. So yeah, that's Grave Ambitions. That's really scary. That's also a solid opener play. It seems like it'd be good all game.
Yeah, really good in general all the time, but a nice opener to get you in and to have that other kind of mix up between do they go fast, long range, or mid trying to duke out that like slow sweep, or do
They try to
punish you for
punish your
ease?
transforms. Right. Okay.
Yes. Especially because I believe, before I put my foot in my mouth here, get the ranges on this. Yeah, they can't get at that sweep unless they somehow can break your sweep from 4 or push you. Um, enough is undodgeable in the base kit
Yeah.
because they can cross and you
They
still
can't
hit them.
cross. Right.
They
Yeah.
can't cross out of it. And if they are pushing you but not backing up, it's 1 to 3 range. So and with six guard, so it's really hard to not get hit by that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and they can't spike you at this range. So
Yeah, I mean, just playing the range 3 mix up at range 4 is frequently very very strong, but before close 3 enables all sorts of scary things.
mhm.
Cool. Okay. So I'm looking for that early on. Um,
You can also play with Ashen Claws. Now, the metas for Ashen Claws is a little bit weird because, especially getting into the later seasons, the there's so many people that have a speed 5 at range 4 now.
yeah.
Like before, it used to be uncommon, and therefore the speed core at range 4 is 4 because of dive. But I don't quite follow that rule. Now it's gonna depend on the character, but I don't always fully follow that rule because you just
Because kids these days have above curve range 4 options everywhere. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
kids these days. Yeah, exactly.
with your cancels and your fast dives.
And your
But
bad size and all your things.
in the period where Taisei was played in the season 2 meta, was that still true? Or was it still kind of tough to land an Ashen Claws even though it was on curve at range 4?
Um, It was the speed was not the problem. It was definitely doable and not uncommon, but also it's your only thing that its speed was not a problem. You throw it and they have nothing to respond to except for if they have a something that will either punish you for hitting them for it or if they have a cross and they cross out of the way. The problem is that it's very telling because you have nothing else that hits from range 4 on open because the only other ranged option is an ultra
Is
move.
an ultra. So
So
it's like you do have the move don't move mix up with dive, but if they play sweep, you're gonna push him to range. Taisei can't hit
doesn't like
if he
range
yeah.
6. No.
So either you're going to get your transform but trade down by pulling their sweep into you, which sounds
Hmm.
awful to do, or you're diving in and they can mash sweep anyway.
Yeah. So
Okay,
like
I get you.
you can just throw a sweep at it and then you're in a bad spot. And like you want them at 2 because 2 is Taisei's favorite range. So ideally it's pretty nice because you get your transform, you hit them there, it's on curve, and then you can put them right where you want them to be. But it's really easy to punish you for using it. That's not to say you shouldn't do it anyway sometimes. But it's easy to see what's going on and to either get out of it with whatever nonsense they have or find a way for them to make it either less valuable or just too expensive in what you're doing. Either being that sweep, I take 6 life in a card, which
Which
a
sucks.
good no.
Yeah,
Um,
no one likes that.
no one likes that, especially if
Yeah.
you have transforms in your hand. Um, that you desperately don't want to be out of your hand.
Right.
Or they're now at range 6, and if they're a ranged character, that's bad for you. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world, actually, because if they are not a ranged character, so they're not someone that does well at range 6, maybe you are slightly better. Like if they're a very, very close range character, you can do 3 just fine. So they'll have to close in on you a little bit. Or if they are either equal in range to you, or just not a long range person where being far away is awful, having a little bit of stall time when you're both like, well, we both don't want to be here, but neither of us wants to spend the resources to go fishing for your transforms in your deck is not the worst thing in the world.
Right. Okay.
And
I mean,
having a turn where you're safe just by being far away ain't bad, and you have Bloodthirst.
Yeah, I was gonna say if they're at 6, you can probably find a way in with before close 3. You've got ways to do that. I'm also noticing that like among the normals, at least, like Ashen Claws kind of doesn't lose combat. If you play
it's very nice.
If you play it on curve, like pusher pull up to 2, flexible positioning is actually kind of crazy on a character who can run this kind of offense. So that's really cool.
Absolutely. And it's nice that it's an after, so you can miss and you still do the thing.
Yeah.
You don't need to hit. Also, even though it's 2 to 4, it's and you can throw it long range, and especially to like duke some things out or whatever. It's really good at 2. At 2, you can move a sweep out of the way. If you're like, all right, I play my card, and they respond with a sweep, all of a sudden that sweep's at range 4, and they can't hit you.
Right. So it's an on curve kind of projectile poke kind of thing, but it's also just like a really good mid speed close up.
Yeah, for sure. And when it can be brutal when you're set up. So, like for instance, if you're range 2 with an Ashen Claws, you add 2 power. That's 6. So like that's nice. It will break those other mid speed things. But if you have, I don't know, Anathema Surge or an EX, it's power 7. So you will also break focus. Which doesn't move, but you will.
Right. Okay. So yeah, you can hit hard enough to actually have that matter anyway. And also, I mean, like if they throw a spike or something, you pull them in instead. To dodge that way. So yeah, all right, that's just a versatile card in general then.
Very versatile movement there. It is harder to get it up to the power level that it needs to break focus because then you need to hit 8, but hitting 8 is not undoable with what Taisei's got going on or with an EX of what this is, especially. That's why I'm noting this one specifically because oftentimes you see an EX of a transform and you'll just immediately EX transform it. Right. And early game, that's much more viable, but like especially later in, if you have both of them, range 2 EX this, especially with this other like +3 power boosts, is hitting for 8, because that's 3 and 1 from the EX, hitting for 8, speed 5, with 3 armor and a guard. So
yeah, that's really safe, actually.
It's so safe. It's ridiculously safe. The only thing that can get them out of it by base is a cross, and if they can't cross all the way out, so they are like they don't even need to be fully cornered. Like you can be here because like they don't even need to be fully cornered because it hits up to 4.
Right.
So, but if they can't cross far enough away from you, you'll still hit them. Well, if they don't have the room to fully go back, you can still get them for it. And if you do, then their cross is gone.
Okay, so this is a pretty good transform. I like the transform on it, but if I can land it in the late game as part of a setup,
it's brutal. It's so safe and it hits for so much.
Catching cross while breaking focus. I mean, I know that requires a lot of resources and setup, but that's very strong. And in the meantime, it's just a solid mid speed or a solid poke to deal with sweep to mess with my opponent's ranges.
Yeah, especially because one of the things that Taisei wants to watch out for, and the ways to deal with him, is if you rush him down fast before he has time to get online. You heal him before he can die once for freeze, and then he's dead. So like people hitting for rather than you need to do a lot of big strikes instead of a bunch of little strikes, because if you trade little strikes, Now he has a lot of gauge, and he's probably been setting things up in the meantime. Versus if
Okay.
you hit him like 3 times for 6+
Six.
each,
Right.
that's probably not going to be a good day for you.
So they're going to be going for haymakers more often into Taisei early. So this is kind of like a stronger defensive option than it looks even.
Yes, because that is a good way
Okay.
to counter him is to go for bigger hits, and this will handle a lot of those bigger hits. Um, so you kind of know what's coming. I mean, not necessarily, but this can deal with some of what he struggles with
Right.
early.
Okay. Sounds good. So that's
So
that's Ashen Claw. Should we just move right through the kit then?
yeah, let's keep going. Um, you have Anathema Surge, so it's minus the movement across like in the way that it looks. So 1 to 2 range, 6 power. Sorry, not 6 power, 6 speed. So it's on curve at range 2. It's under curve at range 1. If you EX it, it's on curve at range 1. Which again, you could do it to throw it instead of throwing instead of hard
The
transforming it
EX
because it
transform, right?
becomes on curve at a different range. So they're different options. It's nicer that it's on curve because you really need to hit this transform. Um, you can also be above curve at range 2. So if you EX it on attack, you can both get the attack and they can't even EX cross out of that. They're going to get hit and you're going to have so much armor that it doesn't matter. Because after gain +3 armor, and then if you EX it, it's +4 armor. So you'll probably be able to soak if something comes back at you, whatever you were hit with. It doesn't hit very hard, so it's hard to get it to break things early on. But it does have a lot of value to it with hit gain 2 life and after +3 armor. So that's 5 life differential of if theoretically you're getting smacked back for that full 3 amount, you're getting 2 and you're blocking 3 of that damage just on the card itself. So it's got a very low power amount. But the actual life differential of what you're doing is pretty good value.
Is kind of higher, sort of everywhere but the power. Because this is Edge of Death. I be pretty concerned about like maybe if I play Demon Blood and get one in play and then the other one comes in later, cool. I have like sort of a high value poke that gives me some life back and stuff. But is it tough to play this card before you actually have Edge of Death in play because you could whiff with it?
Yeah, you're worried about it. I'll do it a lot. I think it's tough to play it because if you lose it, it hurts. It hurts so bad. But I think you don't often have the time to wait. I think it's the thing that you need to consider with Taisei. So like it is very unsafe to use it and then risk losing it. But you don't have the time to sit there and you're good at neutral. You're very good at neutral. But you don't often have the time to sit there and go through your deck to find a second copy of it.
Right.
To perfectly hit that thing, because they're going to come at you hard and fast. So I think that's kind of the core of what his whole shtick is with the way that you're eating your own life and putting yourself low and doing things, is you have to take that risk and do the thing oftentimes. Now, don't do it stupidly. You can't just be aggressive for the sake of being aggressive. But even though it is very dangerous to risk losing this, sometimes you need to throw it and get the card down. When you're in a good position. Okay. So it's not something that I would avoid doing just to avoid doing because you don't have the time. You have to put yourself in a good spot and like have a good sense of what's going on. But if you're too scared to throw these, you'll die anyway.
Right.
Like you can't let like fear of losing a good thing completely clog you down unless your hand is set up with a bunch of good defensive good options to keep you alive and like stick around for a long time already, because you just won't have the time to go find it.
Right. Okay. So these are transforms first if I can get them, but I don't have the luxury of saying like, I'm at range 2 and Anathema Surge is on curve here, and I don't think they're going to be able to DP me out of it or something. I'll wait. You need to press the accelerator. You need to hit the gas. Like you're Taisei, you got places to be.
You got exactly. You got places to be. You got to do it. Like it's a different case if they have a above curve speed 7 range 2.
Right.
But if they don't have specific counters, and you're like, well, I'm hoping they don't have
EX
Their
cross.
EX cross,
Right.
you just gotta do it sometimes.
Right.
Like if you don't, you'll die by pure indecision.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Because you can't sit there and fiddle for like
Right. Okay.
forever.
So like if they have light down, maybe hold off. But you
Yeah.
do need to hit them with this every once in a while. Is that the same for Dust to Dust, or is
Yes.
Demon Heart
I
even that is not so important that you won't just throw Dust to Dust sometimes?
I won't throw it for just to do it. If they've got anything that's like an extra setup, I won't do it. But if I'm at range 1, they don't have any particularly like extra above curve hard counter to make me not hit. If they have something that's bad to see as in I get hit back, it's kind of a different story. But if they don't have a super special dodge and I'm at range 1, yeah, I'll throw the card.
Okay.
You gotta do it sometimes.
Okay.
You get there, you have to pace. Because if you don't pace, you'll run out of time, and by time I mean life. Especially because when in making your strikes work, you're eating your own life. So like it's both a counter in that you have less life to like trade with. And if they know what they're doing, they're not giving you time. And outside of like regular trading, to make your strikes and things effective, you are eating your own life total. So you're extra clicking down your own clock.
Right.
So you do need to go up and throw these. You can't just wait for them in your hand if you don't have the time to wait for them in your hand. So don't be stupid, but risk is it's risk reward. More than everybody is, but especially him.
Right. Okay. Sure. So and also, I mean, like these are. I'm noticing that he tends to like on curve at 4, on curve at 2, on curve at 1, on curve at 3, slightly below curve at 3. It's a mid speed with ignore guard. He's got like fairly consistent, just good attack shapes. When you start stapling power to them, he's gonna hit really hard.
Yeah,
These are
they're
not
on
hard.
curve.
Yeah, these are not hard attacks to hit outside of like specific counters.
Correct.
Okay.
They're on curve for a reason. Something that something they shouldn't be because it's too strong. But
Right.
as they are on curve. So you need to remember that and use them when they're on curve at times, just
Right.
like to get them off.
Okay.
Especially if you have anything that can add you extra speed. Adding some extra speed, throwing your thing. Okay, maybe you get hit in the face, maybe you don't, but your thing is down now.
Right. Okay.
It's
Cool.
important.
Cool. All right. Those are my transform cards. We didn't really talk about Dust to Dust. It looks like if this is kind of cross like, this is kind of grasp like with some Taisei stuff.
Correct.
What are your thoughts on Dust to Dust as an attack?
Unlike Anathema Surge, which I think has potential for higher value in your tankiness and your life gain, Dust to Dust is nice because it's got a 5 differential between doing 3 damage, possibly more given other things, but like flat 3 and +2. I'm mostly throwing it to get it down. It's very nice later game, like if you have the second copy of it once you're set up, because that 3 +2 power on the 3 becomes 5, so it breaks most mid speeds. Being speed 7 range 1 breaks mid speeds. Very nice.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you need another speed 7 option to close out a game because both your grasps are down. You got Dust to Dust.
Right, and you can probably have +3 power on it given the Anathema Surge boost. And if you have other things like early, I'm throwing it not for the value of the attack, but for you can do it to duke out of things because you have an extra speed 7, which is valuable for you. But mostly to try and get myself set up. Later, having fast speed with just a crazy amount of power, you can break things. You also gain +2 life and may have +2 armor. So dealing 5, gaining 2 with 2 armor is
That's
hard to
value.
beat in
Yeah,
value.
that's a lot of stuff. Speaking of, we sort of glossed over it with Anathema Surge, but like if you do this when you're set up, that's like, hold up.
5 armor.
It's 5 armor, 2 life. That's already 7 delta before we even get into damage, and you're doing 2, and probably you're doing like maybe 3 more on top of that. That's crazy. That's a ridiculous. That's so many numbers that we just said. So when Taisei is set up, his little fast pokes hit hard and get him like delta back in his favor too. Like these are really scary attacks once he's ready.
Right. They're very scary once he's ready, and they reuse. They don't click down your your clock. I'm referring to your life as your clock,
As your
but
clock,
like
right?
because they give you the life back that you would spend doing a full +2 power because you spend the 2 power for 2 power, 2 life for 2 power, 2 armor, and then you get that life back.
Right. Okay.
So not only are you able to do your things with the deltas, but you are not.
You kind of got it for free too.
Yeah, you basically got it for free.
Okay.
Um, and on the flip side of things, for these, not really the ability of themselves paying into these because they don't benefit from extra force, which is the backside,
Right.
but from the alternate ability of Anathema Surge being the +1 speed. This is the speed 8 at range 1, and these are both above curve now.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
now
Okay.
above curve.
So if you are in exceed mode now, you can just go real fast all the time.
You can go real fast all the time. You can take the time to set up, i.e., you have that natural +1 power if you're in your regular range. But you can, if you want to play a fierce, or
Sure.
you want to play anything else that gives you like plus the fierce, you can throw that on. If you want to put extra guard or armor onto it, so it's just like, yeah, okay, you're gonna hit me back, but for nothing, or
Right.
whatever you want to add on to it, you can take the time to add it on, and then it's their turn. But you'll still go first because you're above curve.
Right. So these are in exceed mode especially. They become like really good like boost delivery mechanisms.
Correct.
They're gonna hit. They're gonna hit before the opponent does probably. Cool. All right. And that's kind of true
Um,
in on front side as well. Passing the turn means that you're losing speed ties, which matters for on curve stuff. But yeah, I mean these will hit probably a lot of the time.
they're still gonna hit, and they're still gonna do damage, and you're going to have other stuff for that. You don't have a lot of boosts now that add extra stats so, because you have 3 transforms, and your other two, the stats that they add are not necessary. One is armor, so that's you can be chunky,
Right.
so that's really nice. But the other one is close, so the only other way you have to get flat power, being in your normal kit of fierce, is there. So you don't have extra ways to add power on plus that beyond that regular transform power on the backside outside of the grasp. But you are not as hurting from putting grasp down because you have a different speed 7. So you're not gonna. You
Yeah,
have
there's less
presumably
there's less
essentially 3.
pressure. Yeah, there's less pressure on grasp as an attack because you have dust to dust.
Yes, and now
Okay.
one of them should be down, so it's not 4, it's 3.
Right.
Um, in your math, but you still have 3 rather than 2. And you can add on either you're more defensive in that sense, extra guard, extra armor, possibly with extra power, or you can just not necessarily need the extra stats because you're still hitting good even without extra power, extra things. Use the time to like get yourself into the right position or draw more cards because he wants to be in the right, being able to be in the right spot. Really, really nice. Having more options, also really nice. He can be kind of hungry. So having the time to get more cards or move yourself to where you need to go is if you don't have a boost because you don't have any boost is also just nice to do and a thing to
Right.
consider.
Right. And
um
all of that stuff is enabled by having just sort of innate access to above curve options.
yes,
Okay.
and uh being backside not being a breaker quite as much, but you have more time because of you have your extra speed. The backside ability in and of itself is instead of getting life for paying life for extra power, you pay life for force or gauge. So you will be able to, like, if you want to for the attack, if you need to move, you can pay 1 life to move 1 and have +1 armor now, or move 2, have +1 armor. So you can go, okay, we're at range 3, but actually now we're at range 1. I have a speed 8 and 2 extra armor.
And bonus armor. All right. So this is a when you spend life, that doesn't say during a strike or anything like that. Like
No.
like your new gauge outlet or not gauge outlet, life outlet uh is coming from neutral play now rather than spending for your ability.
Correct. So
All
rather than going for being more aggressive to break, you have really good neutral. You can position yourself while getting value out of it. You can just draw a bunch of cards. Hey, I have a full hand and a bunch of armor.
and a whole bunch of armor. Oh wow, that there's no cap on that either. Interesting. So
Mm-mm.
you can just here's 7 armor for you to chew through. And also, I mean, this ability also means that I basically have
Your ultras are alive
yeah,
as long as you have enough life to pay for them. Your
yeah,
ultras are alive always.
spend 4 life for for an ultra, it seems pretty good. I can I also mix and match? Could I do like 1 gauge and 2 life to do chaos scissors or something?
Correct. You can mix match as you desire.
Interesting, cool.
And you can use that to get yourself. The power of it is you can use it to get yourself back into your favorite life range. So, fun
I've gained so much life from my other effects that I've gotten out of
out of 6, and you want to get back into
Edge of
6.
Death, and you're like, man, I'm not close enough to dying.
Correct. You want to be at 6.
Okay.
So if you're at like 9, you want to spend it. Like, you don't want to like just throw it away, but like if you can get the value out of spending it, yeah, you do want to go back down to 6.
Yeah, that's very funny. Okay, so and you know we're sort of going out of order here, but it sounds like the line of play for the Doulahan then is once you have either exceeded by choice or been forced to exceed, now you have amazing neutral. Now you have ultras you can threaten at will, and hopefully above curve options if you've got your speed boost down.
Right.
So now you still are a low life character and um are trying to beat your opponent pretty quickly, but you can afford to slow down in place of neutral.
Yeah, you want to be quickly is a better word than hyper aggressive. Like you need to be aggressive but with intent. You don't just want to go fast for the sake of going fast.
Sure,
you go fast for the sake of going fast.
You need to be efficient.
Yes, you need to be efficient, especially once you flip over. It's no longer about speed; it's about efficiency and nailing the correct thing.
Okay.
Same thing with the front because you need it to work well, and you don't have the buffer that is 15 to 6 to like get your stuff. That 15 to 6 is getting your stuff set up. 6 to 1 is
killing your opponent,
playing breaking points.
Right.
It's murder. And on the back, it's the same thing of you are more. You have to be very precise. Like you want to be precise about it because if you just kind of do something, you're like, oh, this is generally good, but without an actual follow through. Even if that follow through is I have a giant hand now, that could still be a follow through. You're like, yeah, I have like resources, but no plan of what to use them with, and I'm just kind of in a random spot, and they get you once,
you die.
You're dead.
Yeah, it's over. Okay. All right. So that doesn't change. I still am on this kind of like razor's edge of dying or not, but my plan has shifted based on this ability and based on the bonus speed. Okay.
And the backside tends to do more of the armor stuff too. So
okay, cool. Oh sure, because they have more life outlets than just what's coming out of their strikes.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. We've also already talked about Grave Ambitions being just a really strong neutral boost to threaten all sorts of things. What about Bloodthirst as an attack?
So Bloodthirst as an attack is a very nice Punisher. It is, I think it's stronger on the back than it is on the front, but it's strong in both ways. It gives you, it's essentially an additional way of altering your attack in terms of adding that extra power. So like your kind of shtick being to hit breaking points, this gives you 2 extra range to hit those breaking points. And you don't have to use them if you hit them already, but if you need plus 2 more power to go over something's guard, you can choose after you see the attacks to spend your force to get that additional power. So this thing can hit really hard because you can add it's a speed 5, 1 to 3. You can get it to 5. You can get it to 7 because you use you use your regular ability. It's at 5. You spend the before. It's at 7. So now it's power 7, and possibly power 8 if you're in the Anathema Surge lane. So power 8, speed 5. You break focus.
Yeah, that's messed up. That's an ultra.
It hits like a truck.
I mean, way back at the beginning of this conversation, I brought out Assault and Dive as kind of like the use case for like, you might stun with this, you might not stun with this. This looks an awful lot like a 5 power assault sometimes. Mm-hmm. And if I don't have Edge of Death yet, this does allow me to threaten to break sweep right away without having to do any sort of those extra shenanigans to get assault to that breaking point. So it's just like a slightly easier, slightly more lenient math.
Yes, and you can be at 3 instead if you don't have the extra to get you to 8. You can be at 3 instead of at 2, so you're not risking getting a hit back by a focus.
Right, okay.
And it's good against Grasp as well, because by base, I mean, you're probably going to have some extra armor from shenanigans, but without even shenanigans, it's got 3 yards, so a lot of like typical little jabs do three damage,
Right.
and like a base cross and grasp do 3 damage. If they cross you, they're gonna leave unless they're in the corner. And why are they crossing if they're not in the corner? If they're in the corner and they think it's this, but if they grasp you, they can't get you out of the way. You're still gonna chonk them because you have 3 guard, and you're still in range.
Okay. Between Grave Ambitions and Bloodthirst, do you have a preference, or do you use both sides of this card pretty often?
I find myself using the boost more, but just because the boost is more flexible than Bloodthirst is. Bloodthirst as an attack is really, really good when you are in a position to throw it, and it's not that hard to get yourself into a position to throw it, but you don't just want to do it randomly because you do have to. You kind of have to be willing to go all in, and that's expensive, especially for the front side, like 2 cards or 2 force, because your ultras are so good you don't want to spend them.
Right.
2 force is really expensive, and only 5 power isn't doing much for you with this. Like, yeah, okay, you hit back for a grasp, but anything slower, it just beats you.
Right.
So it's kind of you don't really want to go half into this, or
Yeah.
at least be prepared not to go half into it.
And the before effect, you get to see your opponent's card, but you need to commit the life ahead of time.
Yes, you need to commit the life ahead of time. So it's if you're not like in a space to use it for its full potential, it's just kind of mid. But if you are, can hit really hard, but you usually need to be a little bit more set up for the attack to be functioning the way you want it to be, versus the boost always functions for you.
Okay.
So that's why I think I find I end up using the boost more than the attack, just because that's the thing I'll look for on my opener, and I'll see it more often. I can use it immediately, so I'm not necessarily holding it for later.
Right.
Sure. Move.
Sure. Okay, I got you.
Conveniently on the back, if you pay life for force instead of paying cards for force, A, you save 2 cards, which for Taisei is often more valuable. B, you have 2 armor now. So not only
oh yeah,
do you have 3 guard, but you have 2 armor. So if for some reason you're not going to break with 8, you can take a little bit of that back, but also you can do it on command without having to have cards in your hand, and which makes that a lot easier, and just keeping your options, which is something that is usually more valuable to you than 2 life.
Sure. Okay, cool. So having the having it be a force cost gives me some extra synergy there, so I can kind of choose what again after reveal I get to choose what I'm spending. That's interesting.
Yes, you can sink into it with this.
Cool. All right. How about Black Volt?
Black Bolt's spicy. I love him. Black Bolt's really fun. It's a 1-3 speed 4 that ignores guard. So just having this exist in your kit threatens them from playing anything that any of their slow moves, because it will go over the armor for focus. Just it by base, it beats the armor from focus without the guard, and everything else is basically guard only except for block, and they're blocking. They're sad, but you're spending a lot of resources at the very least.
It's like cool. They've found a way to lose the strike in as low commitment way as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and if it's they have to spend more than usual because you're not using the guard, so the numbers it's even instead of odd. So they'll have to at least spend 1 card to match it. And if you're adding power to it, which probably will in some way,
you probably
have to spend 2. And if you're not even spending for extra power, but you have the Anathema Surge's Edge of Death boost, that's 5. And then they'll have to spend 2 cards and waste 1 of the armor.
Right. Right. Okay.
To be inefficient about it.
It's very. It either beats slow things or it really annoys them.
Yes.
Okay. So other
and
than
it just threatens you not to be able to play these things.
Right. And also on top of that, gain 3 life. That's a really strong mid speed.
It's really strong, and you get 3 life to not only recur your cost from paying into extra power or extra things, but +1, because I usually see a gain 2 life as a net 0. A +3 is a +1 to me, long term. So you've not only recovered your costs most of the time, but you've gone up by 1 more.
Actual life gain rather than just like cost reduction or something. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. I'm also looking at the stat line in the range band, especially here, and noticing that this would go very, very well with defend.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Because if you put a defend on it or other ways of getting armor, all of a
Right.
sudden you can tank through. Just you can tank through quick things and then murder everything that's slower
Right.
than it.
I forgot that you have other ways to get armor. So this is another one actually that gets kind of nutty when you're in exceed mode.
Yeah, you can walk up to them and be like, "Hey, I have
Enough armor
I
to deal
walked
with
up
your
to you.
grasp.
Yeah, I am now at range 1, and I have 3 armor, and I have 3 armor, and if you can't beat that with something faster than me, I kill everything that's slower than me."
Yeah, okay, cool. All right. Um
Um,
so but all the time, just like having this in your kit is a way to check your opponent's slow options.
it's a great way to check your opponent's slow options just by existing, but by actually throwing it, it's really good too, just in its value and what it can do.
Right.
Also, if it's speed 5, it's on curve, and that's not a hard thing for Taisei to do, given on the backside. Hey, are you at your favorite life total? It's speed 5 now. Now
Yep.
it's on curve, ignore guard.
Yeah, that's and gain 3
5
life.
damage.
Yeah, that's
5 damage, ignore guard, gain 3 life on curve.
that's a screwed up card at that point. Okay. So a couple of different ways to make this crazy, but it's already just pretty good.
Yeah.
How about Demon Hide?
Demon Hide, very, very nice as well. It's +3 armor, and then after you can put it back into your hand. So if you don't have to risk, hey, I want to use it for its boost now, but then I'm not going to have it for an attack later. Now they will know it's in your hand if you put it back in your hand, but sometimes threatening this in your hand by letting them know, hey, Blackfoot's an option that I could be throwing right now, is something you kind of want to do.
Right.
Now you'll risk, especially if you know they have both of their blocks left, getting it smacked out of your hand. But it can't get focused to be forced to be played as an attack when you don't want it to be played. And they having to play around knowing that anything slow can get just eaten its guard eaten through makes your faster moves safer. Um, so like it's a trade-off between known information, but also having that threat very present and there in their minds can also be something that you can use to your advantage. In addition to the fact that you don't have to, if you have the life to put it back in your hand, you don't have to do the same kind of math between do I want this as a booth or do I want this as an attack.
Right.
It's
I could
do
use
I
every time I can do that math because
I
I'll
can
get
do
it again
both.
and again. Yeah. I also, I mean,
Correct.
with Demon Heart, uh, +3 armor after you may spend 2 life parentheses
So maybe plus
for +2 more
5
armor.
armor.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and then you get that
Yeah.
back. Okay, and so
So
then
you can
you're
decide, hey, do I need 5 armor right now? It's
right.
mine.
Okay, so God, you're the cockroach comparison is
He's a
he's
cockroach.
he's hard to kill. Okay,
He's really hard to kill. It's like he lives on the edge of death, but it's so freaking hard to kill him because he just has so much armor and so much life gain that you'll get your strikes that hit hard will get you to like might get you, oh, now I'm at 3, but hey, look, he's back at 5 or back
right,
at 6. Like, you
and
won't do as much as you think you do, and then he comes right all the way back up.
and here's 5 armor on top of it, so you didn't do anything that strike. And so for Black Volt and Demon Hide, I just asked about Bloodthirst and Grave Ambitions, whether you prefer the attack or the boost. This one, it seems like what you would prefer is Demon Hide, and then later on Black Volt because you can do both because you can recur.
You can do both
Right.
because it's rude. And recurring it is both a cost, but also
It's kind of what you
a
want to be doing
benefit.
anyway.
Yeah, you get that extra armor. Now, if you're not going to actually use the extra armor, it's a little bit of a waste. It does get you the card back, so 2 life for the card back is still nice. Like, it's a great card. I would want that back if I can spend it.
Sure.
But it is a little bit of a waste. But oftentimes, when you need that 3 armor, you think you're going to get hit first anyway.
Right. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
We have reached the ultras. How do we want to discuss these? We've talked a little bit about his exceed mode already. I'm not sure if we kind of I sort of stole your thunder there when we jumped over to talking about it ahead of time. But you had a special thing planned for the exceed mode in the ultras.
No, it's fine. We'll get there when we get there. It's the flow. It's totally fine.
Okay.
I think one more thing before I leave these, because once we start talking about the ultras, we get into silly. Okay, I'm gonna say we get into silly land, but Taisei is always in silly land.
Right.
Is that there's so many things that give you life back, and 2 life might not seem like a lot. And I'm telling you to spend it. You should spend it. Spend the life. Get your value. Please remember that. Don't be afraid. But also, it's way more expensive than for him than it is for everybody else. Not just because he has less life to play with, to start with. That's actually kind of fine. But because he wants to live at 6, you're usually trying to stick around here. So when you go down to, you only have one more free use of that 2 without getting your life back before you can only use 1 without killing yourself. So like it's actually really expensive. Even to just 2 life is very expensive. So I encourage you to not be afraid to use it, but also don't just pay costs without thinking about it, because your clock isn't 15. Your clock is 6 to 1 before you have to have
is really 6, and then maybe you're up to 8. Now you're back down to 6, and you're going to be kind of hovering in this range if things are going well.
Yeah, you'll hover. You're hovering at 8 if things are going well. You're hovering at 6 if they're going less well, and you're hovering lower if they're going even poorer for you.
Right. Okay.
Because if you hover at 8, you can on front side on command. You're at 6 now because you pay that cost, and then your card is considered being at 6 during the strike.
Right.
Yeah. So you can get yourself into the range of, you get bonuses while being at your maximum thing to possibly get back up and be at 8 again when they're coming at you.
Right.
But if you have your clock isn't necessarily, it's to die, but the clock is to how long can you use your abilities, because everything needs you to spend life.
Right.
So if you don't have the life to spend, you can no longer do a bunch of your fun tricks. And if you can't do a bunch of your fun tricks, it's going to be a lot harder for you to land the cards to get you the life back, or to break things to save yourself, or just not get murdered. So it's a usage clock that's going on here as well. So you either want to have a plan to get the life back, or make sure it's worth it. It often is worth it, but don't just do the thing for the sake of doing the thing, because you'll eat yourself so far that you can't eat your life any farther. It's also why the boost on Action Clause is a little bit better than it looks. It's just good in general, but like it's a little bit better than it looks like anyway, because you're sitting at such a tight clock in here that 1 extra life coming back up makes your basically doubles the amount of strikes that you can play while using your ability at full power without having to charge back up again.
Right. When you were talking about Anathema Surge and Dust to Dust giving you 2 life back and saying that is actually just a use of your ability, it's not actual life. Well, now I got hit, gain 1 life, and also I'm getting life from other places. Now I'm actually ticking the clock back up slightly. Like I'm making progress up rather than just staying neutral all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, and making it less expensive. Like it's having this for makes normals have the speed at which you run through your own resources, which is really nice.
Okay. So in order to kind of feather this clock a little bit, in order to sort of like keep these resources, keep this clock in this region, am I like playing a normal with my ability and then playing a special and then sort of like ebbing and flowing how aggressive I'm being? Or is it more like I'm gaining life with something, I'm gaining armor with something else to kind of nullify a strike? Like what does keeping my resources or keeping my life in this region look like in practice?
It really, I do think it looks like not trying too hard to go into, hey, I only want to play my big crunch guy, and like wasting other strikes. You do want to flow back and forth between what works well for you. Neutral's a lot more, like your regular attacks normals are just good, because they're normals, but with a whole bunch of extra stuff tacked onto them, making them way stronger. But you do have to note, even though you're going to see them more often, without the deathless on them, they do eat you a little bit faster. So you have to balance between what you want in terms of value of killing them faster, but also making sure that you are
not
you're doing is going to
totally burning yourself out.
Not totally burning yourself out. So that it means frequency, but I think more it means order. So like the order of play in which you do things. So if you know if you don't have your anything like deathless or things like that, and you're going for a um, huge chunky spike, and then you're gonna eat your life to do it, hit really hard. It's gonna be awesome. You're throwing the thing, and then you're gonna land yourself a 2. Um, you might want to, if you can, and now it depends on what you can do because obviously you're on the field, but if you have the choice between it, you might want to get that black bolt down first because instead of 4 to 2, which 2 now limits you to 1 life without dying,
Right.
if you can get yourself that 4 will go to 2 and then we'll go back up to 5.
And then play the
So
big
now you're
scary
on
spike.
odd. Yes, big series
Okay.
spike. Then you're on 3, and 3 is so much stronger than 2 for you, just because you can use your full ability once,
And
or at least threaten using it.
get down to 1 life exactly and say, all right, cool, we can get a little bit more life, get back up to 3 and hover in that like extra spicy zone.
Correct.
Got it.
So like crossing the threshold of 2 from 3 to under 3 is really big because it shuts down stuff off. So your ordering of when you do things might change, not because of like what is easiest or what gives you the most value, but because of which cards are going to get you the most life to be able to spend more life on the next play that you want to make.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So shall we move over to the ultras?
Yes. So the ultras. So I you might have a guess, and this will come back around after I explain how they work in general on the presence of stun immunity on both of these things as to what you can do with them. But the attack on its own before the secret spiciness is they're pretty solid. So this is Chaos Scissors. I think one thing to note about his ultras is that their boosts are fantastic, but their costs for their gauge costs are also relatively low.
Yeah.
Especially given later seasons' tendency to cost like 4 or more. You're playing these, and like for him, gauge early is so expensive, but they're not so costly that you can't do it because they're not huge cards. Even though 2 gauge for you, before you're flipped over or in the safe zone, like the fully safe zone is super expensive.
Right.
It's still doable. You do throw these cards as attacks. I don't throw them super often early game as attacks, but they are cards that get thrown as attacks throughout the game. And you could do it if you wanted to early, if you really think it's going to make it work. So I would note that the gauge costs are not ridiculously expensive, to the point that having them online means adding threats to the board, even if you don't intend on using them, versus some characters where their ultras, they do play them, but because it costs 4 gauge, you're not even considering it in the realm of all options until mid to late game.
Right.
For Taisei, this is going to be online really, really fast. So whether or not you throw it super early, the fact that you could throw it puts that as a thing on the board for both them to remember, but for you.
Right, and you're fighting with your own urge towards safety because you need to be able to exceed if you have to. But also, hey, I mean, ultras are good, and maybe I can incur a little bit of risk now. A 2 gauge ultra that probably is going to hit is really just 1 gauge because it'll go back to gauge. Like
Correct.
maybe I can make up 1 more gauge later. I'm back on that sweet spot where I can exceed again. It's
especially with his exceed being in an odd number, being a 5, it means that if you have 2
transforms, right? It's just
2
1
transforms,
gauge.
it's just 1 gauge. So if you land the attack,
now it's back.
Now it's back.
Interesting. Okay,
now you can't die in the middle of that and also do the thing without the extra enough. But the next turn you can do that.
Right. Okay.
With the odd numbering there. So yeah, they are they're things that you'll definitely play, and you could play early. You don't want to be stupid, but also prepare to die sometimes. Don't be afraid to.
It's just a card game. Don't worry about it. Sometimes you'll die.
Don't worry about it. It's okay. Sometimes you'll die, especially when you're getting the feel of things. It's okay. And once you learn to be able to throw them when they're a little bit riskier, you'll get a lot better at it.
Right.
So yes. So Chaos Scissors, it's under curve by base. So it's 1 to 2, range 8 power, 5 speed. So by base, that is under curve at range 2 because you will lose to a cross when you are initiating.
Right.
That being said, you are stun immune, so if they are not moving out of the way, even if they go before you, you can still hit them back no matter how hard they hit you. And if you have anything that gives you speed, i.e., your backside with Edge of Death, you are now on curve. Or if they've used their crosses throughout the course of the game. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of these things that because he hits so hard, that cross is sometimes the only answer to in your base kit. So
they're kind of pressured to use it.
They are pressured to use it, so you can watch for the moment they go out, and all of a sudden this is on curve again if they don't have a card in their kit that is speed 6 range 2.
I'm also noticing that stun immunity on a fast enough card with this range band also makes Grave Ambitions into Chaos Scissors pretty scary.
Very much so, especially because speed 5 is a lot less under curve when it's not range.
when it's range 1 to 4, yeah. Or, range 1 to 5, yeah.
5, yeah.
Okay.
It's a lot more on curve now.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, even if you might be sometimes worries with cards with stun immunity is that it's stun immune, but you took so much damage that the thing wasn't worth it to throw.
Right.
But for Chaos Scissors and typically the way how you will use it, that it hits for 8 by base. It's usually going to hit for 9 or 10 at least, possibly 11. Just by virtue of when you'll throw this or whatever. But even just the base 8 breaks focus. So you're stun immune, but you're probably only going to get hit by quick things before you get to go, as long as you're in the right position.
Right.
So you will break most things after you. So you are risking getting, you have to soak the damage first, but you don't have to be precise about how much armor that you have in order to soak that damage. And you'll probably break everything slower than it. So you're not quite as threatened by really hard-hitting slow moves, because you'll probably be able to break them before they can come back at you.
Right. Okay.
They can't punish that stun immunity quite so much.
Just 8 is enough to beat focus. That's short of my opponent has defend and is throwing focus as well. This is gonna break hit some breakpoints pretty easily. It also does have this hit effect that does not look like I want it.
No, it's ouch. So yeah, when there's a trade-off here because it's 8 by base, it does some fun things.
For 2 gauge,
is that for 2 gauge, is that you hit yourself back, so you deal yourself 3 damage, which is painful considering you're at very low life, and it's an odd number, meaning a lot of your ways to recover it only recover things by 2.
Right.
So you're shifted 1 over for a while on your clock. If you take the damage. That being said, your damage, this will hit against armor. So if you have armor, you can negate your own hit back damage, especially if you don't end up going second. So if they decide to play it fast, their fast cards, if they do a lot of damage, fine. But if they're doing traditional pokes, that they can poke you to clear that armor, and then you'll hit yourself for full. But if they decide to go slow, they're not going to hit you back because you stun them. So your armor that you put into this attack with whatever resources that you paid is going to be used to negate the damage it does to itself.
Because Koronair, I really hate it when I have armor on my attack and I stun my opponent clean. I'm like, that's so much lost value. Now I can hit myself.
Now you get the value
and make sure that the value is still there. Okay, that's very funny, but that's
it's always value to use the
cool.
UA with Demon Heart, because you're gonna at least get it back for yourself.
Right. So you can so when you punch yourself, you're getting value out of your armor even though you're stunning your opponent. Cool. All right. Because this also has Demon Blood on it. Should I kind of consider the first use of this card that I see tends to be reserved for Demon Blood to get
correct
one of my transforms?
It almost always doesn't get used as an attack till later, just because Demon Blood, he uses transforms so bad, and he's specific ones so bad that if I see it and I don't have a transform, I'm throwing it as a transform. I'm getting that transform now.
Right.
And spending my life
right.
Getting myself a transform, calling it a day.
Right.
So you don't get to use the attack quite as often because it's so valuable early game, and which is where you typically tend to see it or are fishing for it to get your transforms out. But it's such a spicy attack once if you are able to get it back either through reshuffle or you see the second copy. It's also why I don't talk about the EX version of this quite as often. The EX version of this is brutal because now it's on curve and deals 9.
Right,
and it has a built-in armor.
You have an armor, so you take less, so it ups your delta even more. But that means that you didn't play Demon Blood at all.
Yes, it means you didn't play Demon Blood at all. So its base is way stronger and way more self-sustainable, even without the rest of it, and you can add the rest of it on to be truly gross. But it's a reward for not having to play Demon Blood, or for being able to get here, having not seen it, and still being able to set yourself up to a point where you can use it later. Not something that I plan around having later an EX version of, because I know the first copy tends to go so fast.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and Demon Blood being you spend 3 life, which to transform a card from your hand to your deck, and then I talked about earlier about how that's so important to be able to get the right transforms. Because you lose 1. It's also why you're not quite as scared all the time about throwing 1 as a 1-move attack. I'm not always as scared as throwing them as a single attack as I am as an EX attack, even though EX can confirm more often. Because if I EX it, both copies are gone. If I miss it. If I throw 1 of it and I miss it, and the other copy's in my hand, I can Chaos Scissors it out of my own hand if I really need to.
You could still Demon Blood it even then. I also noticed for Demon Blood, now that we've actually gone through the transforms, spending 3 life to transform a card from your hand looks even cooler when I have Demon Heart already in play.
Yeah.
So if I can land Dust to Dust naturally, and then use Demon Blood to transform Anathema Surge, I'm also getting armor out of the equation, which is pretty cool.
And solves your telling on yourself for having Dust to Dust problem.
Right.
So it's greedy, true. But it is very powerful.
Sure.
Doing it in that order.
Right.
It's less safe, but it's stronger. The core principle of this character.
Right. I didn't even notice that Demon Blood also has a hit effect to gain 2 life. So that's just extra stuff on top. So I'm going to be using both sides of this card all the time.
Yeah, you're going to get the life back, and if you have Dust to Dust up already, you're more likely to be able to hit back because either you might be playing normals with more armor, and then you have additional armor because you spent life, or if you're playing quicker things that only get beat by small pokes, a lot of small pokes can't go through 3 armor,
right?
Being that odd number. And you don't quite as mind as much that this is an odd number of life spend, because odd number of life spends once you're really in the zone is more expensive because it's harder to recoup.
Right.
But when you're up here,
getting there is not
and
a big
you're
deal.
Starting, it's not a big deal. 15 to 12, okay, whatever. And now you put yourself on even, which you like to be on even.
Right.
So insta throw early if you want to do it, and combos nicely into other things there, and you can get the life back if you hit. I'll still do it even if I don't really think I'll hit my next strike. It's better. But I want those transforms so bad.
Sure. Okay. And then finally, Nightmare
Tears.
Oh,
no. Not Nightmare Tears yet.
Oh, not Nightmare Tears
Silly.
yet? We have more
Silly
stuff.
of Chaos Scissors.
Okay.
And you can technically do this in Nightmare Tears too, but it's hilarious with Chaos Scissors. So, I recall... I don't know why I've decided to move these off. I have. Earlier with Chaos Scissors, earlier we mentioned that if you die, your strike doesn't end. So if you want to, if this is Wild Swung Out, or if you play it from your hand, you can play Chaos Scissors when you have no gauge on the front side, if you're at 2 life or less, and spend the life for extra power. So very, very, it's like edge case. It's not fully edge case because you actually do live here fairly often.
Right.
And oftentimes when you're at 2, you're underneath your 3 threshold, which is your safety point, and then you're mostly that a lot of your other things are turned off full capacity because you can't do things without killing yourself.
Right.
Right. So they might oftentimes think it's safer when you're at 2 than you're at anything else. But when you're at 2, you can play Chaos Scissors from your hand, put it face down from your hand with no gauge, kill yourself, and then spend gauge to put yourself from 10 to 6 back into your favored range to reactivate Anathema Surge, and now your attack has +2 power, +3 power, +2 armor, and +1 speed.
Because you wait, hold up. Because you already spent you started the
You
strike
spend it.
you started the strike with this. So you
Yes,
began the strike by giving yourself +2 power,
correct. Killed
then
yourself.
killed yourself, then flipped. You do you need to spend more you spend more life on top of that.
Yes, if
In
you have, in order to get yourself back down to the 6 range,
right.
which activates Edge of Death, which for the strike, because you're paying that
Right.
as a cost to activate the card. So you're back into your favored range. So you have an extra speed. So now this is speed 6. So it's surprise on curve, no gauge. You have both the plus speed plus power from an Anathema Surge, the +2 power from the front side.
And the
Um,
free gauge expense from your exceed side all in one strike.
Correct. And you'll have a total, if you have Dust to Dust off, you'll have the 2 armor from spending the 2 life to get to from 2 to nothing for the power. You'll also have the 4 armor that you got from spending the life to pay for the card. So you'll have a total of 6 armor.
So you won't take the 3 damage, and also you can, if they somehow go above curve, you can still armor through some stuff.
You can still armor through something that is very small and quick, which typically does about 3, and have 3 life left over to block any damage that you would deal to yourself, and be dealing 11.
11 to your opponent. That's so cool. That's such a cool interaction. So you can use both character abilities at once for a strike as long as you have this setup. That's really, really cool.
Because you're stun immune, it's stun immune, and you don't care about getting hit, and death doesn't stop you.
Yeah, you're stun immune, not death immune. Good. So you
Good.
can so you can use your death to your own benefit.
Yeah, you can kill yourself on purpose to have a really, really cheeky surprise strike that hits for 11.
That's incredible.
Or 12, theoretically, if you EX it. But
if you EX it, that's probably not going to happen. But listen, on curve 11 for 2 gauge and merely your own death is fine.
You're really dying.
Yeah, just whatever. Taisei can do that. That's really, really funny.
Hilarious.
If I was in a situation, by the way, where both I initiated a strike, and I take 3 damage from this hit effect that can kill, that happens before I
you
hit my
lose
opponent.
first. Correct.
I do lose first. Okay, that's good to know.
If you kill yourself before, if the strike, the damage you would deal would kill them, and the damage you deal to yourself would kill you, you lose because you will kill yourself first.
Good to know.
So you can't ignore that. If you're at 3 with no armor, you can't use this, and no way, and like the backside or no way to transform, you can't use this or you lose.
Great. Okay. Cool. Tentatively, unless there's also, more scary stuff about Chaos Scissors. Okay.
Other thing you can do is you can't undo the murdering of yourself, but if you flip this over and somehow they have a way out or something like that, you are not forced to spend your life for gauge. So, and having no, you can have gauge to use this normally.
Right.
It's less of a surprise and less funky, but like normal, good, still a cool thing. But if you don't have any gauge when you do it to trigger all of the stuff, you're not forced to spend a life for gauge. So if for some reason it's not going to work,
you just invalidate it.
Invalidate it and draw another card that has +2 power now.
That's really funny.
And still has power in the armor. So
that's wild.
So you can decide after seeing it, hey, it's not working, I'm going to do something else, actually. And you keep that life here. So not only do you not have to spend, like you're dead, you're in the back now, but not only do you not have to spend, use the card, you can take a second chance at getting something that works with the boosted stats.
Right.
At least some of the boosted stats, so the +2 power, +2 armor. You don't have to move off of the 10. So you don't have to. You won't move off of the 10 because you're not spending the gauge. So if you do get hit hard, you have a sink of the damage that you would have paid to eat things, so you don't end up all the way at 1. So you can save yourself.
Totally dying. Right. Okay.
Yes. You're not risking being at 6 and then getting cracked for 6, nothing you can do. You can put yourself at 10 if you know it's going to murder you instead.
Right. Interesting. What a weird card.
It's very weird. It's hilarious. If you're playing in casuals, warn your friends. They'll just be mad at you.
Yes.
If you're playing in competitive, that's how it works. Live your dreams. If you don't play Taisei, that will surprise you.
Yeah, that surprised me. That's an amazing interaction. I really, really love that.
But if you're playing casual, tell your friends, because you'll do it in the middle of a game and they will be upset.
Yep.
Warn them. Warn them that's how it works.
That's how you lose friends.
Yeah, because it's silly and cheesy, and there's not like it's the thing I love and hate about this character. It's so fun. It's so spectacular. It is an interaction that is found almost nowhere else in this entire game, so people can feel a little bit cheated by being surprised by it, because if you're not familiar with it, it's just like, what? You would have to have read the character, thought ahead, found the gotcha, did the thing.
Right.
Which in competitive, you are responsible for knowing all the things, especially because this is rotated out. In the times that it was in play, there was less characters, and in the times that now that it's rotated out, 2 is funky, and you should do some research on 2 if you're not familiar with it going into a legacy tournament. But if you're not in the setting of competitive where you should know better, your friends will probably not know better.
Yep, that's fair. It still would be kind of funny to just hit somebody with this, though.
It's so funny. If they are good natures, just do it. It's hilarious, and no one sees that coming unless they've done it before.
Hell yeah.
Or they know him. Very funny. You kill yourself too, and presumably at that point probably kill them, because by the time you're throwing this as an attack or flipping over, you've hopefully eaten through a big chunk of their life.
Right. You're dealing enough damage that the game is probably going to end fast one way or another.
One way or another. So you either nigh kill them or you kill you to kill them, which is just a hilarious series of events.
Yeah, that's just an odd sentence that you said. I simply kill myself to kill you.
Prepare to die, somebody on the field, or both of us.
Exactly. Not both of us, maybe. Yeah, sure. All right, shall we move on to Nightmare Terrors?
Yes. Okay. So Nightmare Terrors. It is his sort of his get out of jail free card. Not like quite Deus Ex Machina as come out of nowhere like Chaos Scissors is. But Nightmare Terrors is a exceedingly strong defensive card, and resetting yourself when you're down life and your clock is really low and you have not much else you can do, or there's an unbeatable strike coming your way and you're not ready for it. It is stats. It's 2-5, power 5, speed 1, armor 2, and it has stun immunity. Your life cannot drop below 1 during this strike. So if you're playing Nightmare Terrors and it's not invalid, you're not dying during that strike.
Okay. That's already cool. Like, even if this doesn't hit, that's cool.
Yeah. You want it to do all its other nice things. It hurts real bad when you're throwing this and you miss it on accident. But it's not having you can't kill me now, especially when you live so low, or you might live at 1. And they throw a 13 power attack at you. Great. Real nice to have a I don't die this turn button. A really nice backup. Also something that makes them have to consider it again because they're online so fast. And Nightmare Terrors tends to stay in the deck a lot longer than Chaos Scissors because the boost is really good, but the boost isn't I throw it on opening all the time.
Right.
If I have it in my hand and you haven't parried it.
Sure.
Right. So not that you couldn't throw this early, but you might throw it early, just not this late first. But it tends to stay in the deck a lot longer because you're not fishing for it in that way, and you're not throwing it so early.
So it's
a lingering threat. Yes, it's a threat monger of your kill doesn't kill now, and you put no matter how many resources you put into that, it just doesn't do the thing that you needed it to do. Right. Because it doesn't matter how many life you deal. The only life that matters with Taisei is the last one. And this says you are not getting that last piece.
Interesting. Okay. And then so after gain life equal to the damage dealt by this attack, if I'm using this at super, super, super low life anyway, I don't really have the ability to pump this up a whole lot beyond that, because I can't really spend for this if I'm already at 1 life, for example. If I'm already at super low life, I'll just die. So I shouldn't expect this to like hit for 8 or something.
I mean, you can if you're because as long as you're not at 1 on the front, you can still as long as you're not at 1 and don't want to flip over, you can spend 1 life to make it at 6. From 3 going to 1, it's not as painful because and now you're betting on your hitting with this, which is why missing
Yeah,
it can be really sucky.
right,
But if you're going under that 3 threshold where you're turning some things off, but you're getting that all the way back in value, so going from 3 to 1 is not as scary as when you do it and you have no way to get back up elsewise from other things to like do a finisher.
right.
So even really, really low, you're still spending whatever you have into this if you think it's hitting. So hitting it for 7 or for 6 or 7 is not uncommon. Or it still gets the power from Anathema Surge. So seeing it at 8 is not shocking because you have just
You do have enough ways that you actually could conceivably have a huge life swing in your favor by doing that.
correct. And you'll get it back whatever you make, and because it's so low in speed and this being an after effect, if you put yourself from 3 to 1, they hit you for 13 and then you hit them back for 8, you're at 9.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Like you don't care how much damage you take because you're going down.
Unless they threw
Whatever you do
a 0 speed payout into it or something. So I'm trying to land this. It seems like if I'm at range 5, this is pretty solid. If I'm at range 2, it's pretty solid because it would catch cross. It would they would need to be playing specifically like an undercurve assault to deal with it or something. So 1 speed is not guaranteed by any means, but there's probably places I can throw this to make it land okay.
Yeah. You're what you're afraid of for Nightmare Tears is not and if you can throw it when you have higher life, just to be rude and get more damage. It's not bad. Like if you're feeling comfortable, you could do it anyway. But
Right.
then you're risking getting hit a lot, and then the value that you get out of it is a lot lower than if you don't lose anything.
Sure.
But typically you're throwing it lower, so you're not really afraid of getting hit a lot because they can't break you. What you're afraid of is if they move out of the way of it.
Right.
So you're more scared of a dive or an assault than you are of a spike, because if they spike you, yeah, they go through your armor, but you don't care.
Yeah, you're not going to die.
You're not going to die. So you're afraid of them moving out of the way, which is why, like 2, I like 5, I like, but 3 and 4 with these two,
Yeah, that's dicey.
It's a little bit dicey.
Yeah, and
especially
look at your opponent's kit. Like, make sure they don't have something like a range 2 option that moves them in 1 that could mess with this.
Yes, you really need to be aware when you're throwing it. All of their options that move them and or move you.
Yeah.
So if you're not gonna be throwing it 1 for grasp, but you need to really be aware of positioning and things that they can use to reposition, because presumably if they want to, they'll go first because your speed is so low. So this either needs to be a surprise, or you need to be reasonably sure that it needs to be a surprise, or reasonably sure that whatever they're doing is not going to be a repositioner, or it's out. Like they're out of the cards, or you have a really good read on whatever they put down, like they telegraph something and you're responding to it, or they're out of the things that you're worried about.
Okay. And so it seems like most of the time you were playing this in the late game because that's where all of those conditions are likely to be met. You'll be at low life, your opponent will be out of some options. That's when this kind of shines.
Yeah. It's
okay.
Not early because, like, again, it's got 2 armor, and then you can pay 2 life for 2 more armor, so it's got 4 armor and 7 power. So like you might take a hit and go down a little, but it won't be too taxing, and then you go all the way back up.
Right.
So like it's still good earlier, but it just doesn't have the same importance that I find that it does later.
Sure.
And the more you use earlier, the less likely they are to they don't have to worry about it as much later on. So I like to play this later game than I do early game, even if it's still good mid game.
To keep the threat alive, sure. What about False Life?
Real quick before we move to False Life.
Yeah, please.
It's damage dealt by this attack, so if they armor up, they can soak it.
Oh, sure. It's not power. Right. I see what you mean. It's the damage that actually does get through. So if they block it, they're not killing me, but I'm not getting nearly as much life as I would like out of it. I might be getting 0 life out of it.
So you're not going to die. If they block your Nightmare Tears, you are just the saddest person alive, because your trump, I don't die and your life gain,
Yeah.
they've countered both of them. Block
Okay.
is the ultimate. I don't want to see that right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which
Okay.
is why it's way better as a response anyway, because of your don't die thing, but because they're less likely, unless they're baiting it out specifically, they're less likely to be throwing a block.
Right. Right. Okay. I get you.
The important notes when you're calculating your things.
Yeah.
Armor.
Make
Armor
make
will
make
be
make
making a
sure
little
that
bit less sad.
make sure that you're actually hitting for damage rather than just hitting.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Okay.
False life. So now opponent's attack has +4 power. Now gain 4 life and draw 2 cards. This is so much value right now. It's life back, and life is so precious for you. Because that's your clock. That's how your engine, how you need to be able to eat yourself alive to do all your fun tricks. It gets you life, so it's 4 life, so it's not even making it back because you're not throwing it on, like you're not getting life on the attack. It's preemptively 2 more uses of your front side ability and another cheesy use of your backside ability. So really nice with 4 life. You get 2 cards, which is going to be 3 cards because it's a boost and there's no cancels here.
Right.
So you're setting up your hand again. You're refilling your grip. You're getting your life back. So it's just, I have my resources again and I'm ready to go. Both in terms of your life, which is a resource to you, and your cards. So it's a really nice renewal. It does have the downside of their attack has +4 power, but you have ways to make that not as threatening as it would otherwise be, i.e. you have a lot of methods to get armor. And if they don't hit you, they don't trade back.
Right.
So like you have +4 power, but are you stunned? I don't care.
And your whole game plan is already about hitting them hard enough to hit a break point. So if you've got an EX, if you've got something that goes above curve that you can confirm a lot of power onto, you might not care at all about the +4 power.
Correct. But you need to be wary of the same way that you now go over breakpoints, so do they, and you're passing your turn.
Right.
Because +4 power is even more than +3. So a lot of things that would otherwise not break your cards will now break your cards. So not only, like, if you look at this card, you think, okay, you may not think this, but like the trap would be to think, oh, it's life neutral because it's +4 power, gain 4 life.
Right.
But +4 power can be way more life differential than that because they may break a strike, then you don't hit them back.
You don't get gauge. You don't get anything.
You don't get gauge. You don't get
Right,
anything.
right.
They're sitting higher. You're stunned out of what you need to do. So not only is it the threat of losing the life that you just gained, but it's giving you all the resources now and saying use it wisely or we'll take back more than what you got.
Right. Okay. So you really do need like EX cross ready to get out of there. It sounds like.
Yeah, you want to have a plan for giving. You either need to be desperate or you want to have a plan going into giving them this on how to deal with it, based on what they have out or what you have available, or else it won't. It could bite you harder than
Right.
having not played it.
Right. Okay.
So calculated but really strong. If you're able to use it well, you can completely negate the downside. If you're not able to use it well, you'll have lost more than you gained and passed the turn.
Right.
And lost your ultra.
I mean, any one of those would be devastating. All 3 of them at once is bad.
Yeah.
Okay. So be very careful, but if you can do it right, it's really, really strong.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to do it because you do need to. He's resource hungry in both cards and in life.
Yep.
So not off the table, but don't do it with no plans.
Okay, sounds good. And this is like the first card draw that we've really seen in his kit for the most part. You've got. Is there anything else? Yeah. So okay. So
yeah, you don't use that many cards, but you don't have a lot of ways of getting them back.
Okay, so plenty of life drain, but this is or life gain rather, but this is your only source of card draw. So be careful with it. You might need it. Okay, cool.
That's also one of the strengths of the back is that the only card draw you have is Nightmare Terrors, but when you are the Doulahan, you can spend life for cards.
Right.
Which is way more important when you have no other way of getting cards, except for regular prepares.
Definitely. Okay. And odds are, I mean, like, this isn't, you're not gunning for this, but you'll probably end up at this at some point during the game, and you might be able to do a big reload, uh, you know, 4 life for 4 cards to get back to 6 life as soon as you flip. Might not be a bad idea sometimes.
Correct. And you can do the same thing you do with Chaos Scissors into Nightmare Tears, which is you can kill yourself and then spend 4 life to get yourself to 6 to
Right.
power this up. You don't care as much about the speed most of the time for that, but power this up so that it has +3 power, because you'll make sure this is online. You'll have the 2 power from the front side. You'll make sure that now have the gauge for it if you didn't have the gauge before.
Yep.
So you can emergency, like, if you know you need it because you don't have anything else, you're gonna lose a big strike and die, and you don't have the gauge, you can bring it out just in case, and it will hit pretty hard because it will hit for 8. It'll hit for 8, and you have got the extra armor to not and you're going to need that extra armor, especially the way that Chaos Scissors has that nice block 3 and then block itself. Like,
Right.
the numbers make sense here. It's not quite as like precise per se, but you're going to need the big armor that it gives you, because plus the 2 on its own, so you have 8 armor to hopefully tank out the strike that's coming at it that made you play it in the first place, so that you can have your life. You can go all the way up to the middles if you want to here, which is a whole different feeling for Taisei.
Yeah, that's actually weird. I don't know if I like that.
It's weird, but you can being on the
Now
back,
you're on
you're way
Duohan.
easier.
You're like
You don't
sick.
have to eat in 2s. You can draw a full hand of cards or run across the board and then end up back in the spot you want, because you have it's way easier for you to use exactly how much and way more on the back than it is on the front.
I see.
So sitting in the middle doesn't keep you away from your favored range, and you get some turns doing regular strikes, which is cool. Regular strikes without dying, which is cool sometimes.
Yeah,
You're not going to
imagine.
do it quite as cheesy, but imagine you're a regular guy for a little bit.
Imagine the luxury. You just don't have a head. Okay. So, all right. So
yeah. So you could eat that life that you gave yourself extra more and make more use of it than on the front. Having the extra it's cool. Like, you get to be normal and do normal things before you get to go mode, but it's way more useful on the back than it is on the front.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. So that is the kit then. That is all of his cards. We are over 2 hours at this point. Do we want to very briefly, I want to know, does Taisei kind of use the normals normally, or does he have do you evaluate these differently than you would with another character?
So his normals, I think, are generally more valuable for him than a lot of people, just because he can edit the normals the same way he edits his strikes.
Sure.
So in addition to be able to play neutral, all your normals, if you need them to, as long as you're not strapped for cash, essentially, can have 2 power, 2 armor, which just makes a lot of them so much better. Your sweep beats their sweep. Your sweep breaks their sweep. Your sweep breaks their focus.
Right.
That's way stronger. Your dive can break their sweep. Your assault with a little bit of extra finagling can break their sweep.
Right.
Your dive can break their focus. Like, your normals can just be way better versions of themselves than they otherwise would be, which is really powerful. I would look at them not quite as 2 versions of the same attacks, but if that makes it easier than doing, like, you want to look at the individual increments of what you need, but different versions. You have base normal, what you're doing, living the normal life, which just everybody can do that.
Right.
But your normals are also a different upgraded version of that attack.
Right.
And to consider when you're using.
And they're a boost, and their force. So there's a lot of decisions to make here, but for the most part, they're the same cards, just potentially amped up.
His normals are quite strong. Like, his specials are really nice and really, really good fun to use, but his neutral normal game is really strong because you can, without an action for a lot of it, just make them way stronger than they should be.
Right.
And they may or may not get you back a life when you hit with them.
Right.
So they're good tools. His normals, once he's online, are good to see. Are not bad things to see. You don't want to see a hand of them at the beginning, except for maybe like a cheeky sweep if you get the other thing.
Right.
But you you're not sad when you have normals later in the game.
Okay, because you just run people over with them. In terms of the normal boosts, like you mentioned, you can play neutral, so you got all of these things that do your neutral things, which you're going to be using the way a normal character probably would. Um, do you and any considerations about like we mentioned a couple times where defend would be good. We mentioned a couple times where fierce would be good. Do you find yourself playing like light over sweep or anything like that, or is it pretty 50-50?
So, Spike, I like a lot as a boost on Taisei, just because with his other ways to get armor, in the Black Bolt boost and in his normal kit,
Right.
That typically gets you to 2. His base is 2, and his funky nonsense can be 3. But with a base of 2, adding 4 more, or even 3, like 1 more to that, um, makes it tremendously more useful. So I use the defend boost a lot, as I say, more than I use it in any other most other characters that I play as, which I use it as like a specific strat kind of way.
Right.
Spike, I have no worries about being like, okay, I want the defend up, because having a defend up is just good. It saved me 1 life, which is half a clock tick, so it's efficient for my clock, and it makes a lot of my mid to fast speeds just, or like sorry, not unless they're doing it fast, unless you think you're losing the speed tie. But it makes a lot of things really, really hard to stun, in addition to his regular base 2 power armor.
Right.
Um,
And
so
you don't
good.
really have that much difficulty, it sounds like, stunning the opponent cleanly anyway. That's kind of what Spike is for, is your big scary mix-up mid-speed threat. You're Taisei, you're gonna hit hard enough to like we're already talking about stunning focus like it's not that big a deal. Uh you'll be
Right, so you
okay.
don't need it.
You'll be okay without Spike.
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
it's nice that they have a big armor thing to like eat their block, but you don't need the spike for the breaking.
Right.
The defend is a really nice card on Taisei. It just mixes well with his kit.
Okay.
Grasp you can do either way if you need to get
Right.
out of something.
We,
Go
we,
fast is good, especially when you
you,
pump extra damage into things. But the
you,
plus 2 power, way nice.
yeah, and you also mentioned that because you have at least one other copy of Dust to Dust, probably not all of them because of Demon Heart, there's kind of less pressure on Grasp. You can sort of use it however you need to.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And things that wouldn't break at 2 might break at 4.
Yep.
So Fierce is a really nice boost on him because it's double your base. It can be double what it is, both in terms of value, but mostly in terms of breaking things.
Right. Okay.
And you can play with having so much armor and the capability of getting so much armor, or put on top of things with guard. You can reliably get to hit back as long as they don't hit back. So, like, if you play a slow card with his ability and with Fierce, a regular card will hit like a truck. Like a sweep with just the ability, which is, we're gonna get the speed. The speed, super nice. Light is just really good. But Sweep for Taisei is also a really good attack as an attack, because it's so hard to get away from a sweep, and it hits for 8 with his base ability.
Right.
Like an 8 power sweep coming at you that is just mean. So it's a really good attack that's hard to get out of, and he'll probably tank a bunch of whatever you hit him, try to hit him back with, like to make up the value in the meantime before you play your sweep. So sweeps are just killer on him. Not that it doesn't make light weaker, because adding more speed onto things always good to confirm stuff. But sweep as an attack is a stronger attack for him than a lot of people, even already sweep just being good.
Right.
And sweep plus fierce is 10 damage on a normal.
Yeah.
Your normal with 1 boost does 10 and has 6 guard, 2 armor.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the value proposition does not need much explaining. That speaks for itself. That's really scary.
So that's how you kind of want to look at your cards. Is you want to look at them with considering both what they are normally, but what they are once they're transformed by his ability.
Sure.
And considering things.
Sure. Any other considerations about the normals that you want to mention?
I think make sure you keep ways to get in if you get zoned, because it's not that he can't hit from far away, but it's 5 and 6 is not nearly as good for him as being not even just at his favorite range of 2, but being in a melee range is
anywhere
better.
close up. Yeah, so probably don't
He
play
does
cross very
neutrals.
often. Yeah, probably crutch on run a little bit more.
His specials are all good cards, but his power isn't. I have really good. I mean, he does have really good specials and ultras, but like his engine is transforming his cards into being better versions of themselves. So he plays really good neutral game.
Right.
So you don't need to use your special cards as attacks if you don't necessarily want to. But normals don't function very well at really long ranges.
Right.
So because you're so good at neutral, being way far out of your range is bad. So be wary about throwing across as an attack when you don't really need to, because both you're losing a move in and you moved yourself out. So like it's a good dodge, but it's super expensive.
Sure. And likewise,
And
you're probably not
long
going to be
moves are really
playing
dumb.
you're probably not going to be playing backstep on assault very frequently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you almost never going to be doing it. But assault is a nice card to throw on initiation for you.
Oh, sure. I mean,
But boost
yeah.
is kind of not
I
useful.
I would love to throw on curve assault the break sweep. Like we already talked about how crazy he can make some of these normals.
But yeah, the boost not nearly as useful unless in like, hey, the Zangief is this Zangief.
Right. Yeah. Let's get away from the range 1 man, of course.
But other than that, you're not throwing out backstab a lot. Um, yeah, I think that's a good quick version of, considering we're tighter on time because this video's gone quite a while, presumably.
Right.
That's a good overview of some of the key points. I think it's just that Spike has a lot more value as a boost than it would otherwise be as a niche case. For him, it's almost always a really good thing to do. And Sweep has a stronger value as an attack than Sweep's attack contends in late game with how good its boost is.
Right. Sure. And you're always happy to see either side of this card. It's pretty tough to make a totally wrong decision with sweep. It's good. It's good kind of whenever you use it. But
Yeah, I
in
just like to
particular,
remind people because usually a lot of times when you're at 6 lives or less, people may avoid playing cards
right.
like sweep because hey, you could just die or
Yeah,
you
but
can't like waste that life. But for him,
that's the
you're
plan.
at 6. That's the plan.
Right.
So don't avoid your instinct may be from playing most other people to avoid slow things when you have low life because you can't afford it when you're there.
Right.
That's not the case in this. You have to do the reverse of what it feels like you want to do.
Right.
You're sitting at low life and you're playing those and you're playing things like sweep.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Because you have the armor for it.
That makes sense. Sure. Okay. Any other kind of like strategic considerations for Taisei that you want to mention, or should we move on to counterplay to wrap up the lesson?
Let's move on to counterplay. Just because I mean, there's probably things that I'm forgetting here, but again, we've gone quite a while. This is I tend to be more aggressive, so I like to go for breakpoints, but you can play a very, very chunky version of him where you just armor the heck up using using your Black Bolt as armor, paying in for armor, building out. The reason why the front is going to be more comfortable for you if you're aggressive is because obviously you have to you can't play safe. You have to kill them,
right?
And that means you have to throw your strikes. So even if you're on the verge of dying, you have to throw your strikes and know what you're doing. But you'll be able to break things way better. If you're less comfortable with that and you want to play on the back, you can set up things that are really hard to stop, being really armored up, spending your life to get extra armor, in a more fluid way because you have more ways to get rid of it and more chunky cards, and then just playing ridiculously hard-hitting strikes. So you can set up a couple really, really big things on really easily on the back and more easily play defensive there. You can do both on both sides, but those I think just initially might feel, depending on how you like to play things, might feel more comfortable. That might be the side that feels more comfortable to you. If you're starting him, I would try and get a taste for both to see what you like first, because I know Taisei players who will flip over the moment they can flip over because they just so strongly prefer this.
Just to get their economic engine plus their armor stuff to really, really crazy levels.
Yeah, to really, really crazy levels. Either way, though, you can't. he's an aggressive character, and you're not rushed down as in you're throwing things every single 5 seconds. Like you don't feel like you need to throw a strike every turn. But you can't be shy about it either. If you play too safe, playing safe is actually more risky. It can be more risky than being a bit more tempo aggressive.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're giving your opponent more opportunities to kill you too.
Yeah. And same as any transform character, you're going to want to search for transforms as much as possible when it is you have the opportunity to do so. Because even compared to other transform characters who want to do that desperately, he wants to do it more than almost anyone else.
Right. Is it mostly just because he has a low starting life to begin with, right?
Yeah, and having Dust to Dust turns the whole thing online. It changes the math so drastically. And Anathema Surge is transform changes the breakpoints. So
right, sure, okay. So those are all the Taisei things. How do we stop this guy?
So I mentioned this briefly in the beginning. You don't want to hit him a bunch of little times unless you can cleanly stop him from hitting you back. Because if you trade a bunch of little strikes where, like, okay, you hit them for more than they hit you for a bunch of times, which adds up a bunch, he doesn't care that much because he's getting a bunch of resources off of doing that. If you can rush him down either in terms of preventing him from hitting you back or hitting him with a couple of big strikes so he doesn't have the opportunity to build the gauge or get his transforms out, that will more cleanly sever the head. Especially if you can somehow get
Wait a minute. I thought they were trying to kill me before I could sever my head.
Fair enough. We'll clearly chuck your head off a cliff, I guess.
There we go. I'm sorry, continue.
You want to defenestrate. You don't want to decapitate. Big difference.
Okay. All right, no, that's the tagline. Awesome. Throw Taisei out a window, do not cut his head off.
Yeah,
okay.
Correct. If you can somehow get from 7 to nothing, you dodge the entire zone of when he gets his extra stuff for free.
Right.
Now that's a little bit tricky because he can pay into himself on command, at least on the front. But if you can do it, like he goes from 7 to 9 or whatever it is, you can dodge a lot of grief in this area if you can somehow just swamp the whole thing or get him under 3 there. So yeah, I find a lot of big strikes so he isn't getting the gauge, especially if they're either denying him the transforms by missing them, or big strikes so he can't build the gauge to get his flip over. Tends to do well. That usually happens as well by just rushing him down as fast as possible. If you can get him murdered before he gets set up, there's nothing he can do about it. If you can win a couple really good strikes before his transforms are online and he has the gauge to flip over, he's in pain.
It might already be too late. It might be too late for him already.
Yeah, and even if he's able to flip over, while not, like, if you're able to deny him the transforms while letting him have enough gauge to flip over, or like has one and flips over, he doesn't have the leeway he does going in from on the backside with only 10 life and not all your transforms to be able to get the other ones out the way he does starting out with 15 and on the front. Right. Because the backside is very fluid in the way that you can spend your life, but you only have 10 to spend, and it's not on command in the same way except for your ultras, which are weird. You still need your transforms, so like it ties his hands behind his back to be flipped over without his transforms, even if you let him flip.
If you have been playing so well that he rushed Demon Heart and he still didn't get it, and now he's exceeded all of that life spend without getting the armor on top, turns off a lot of those cool plays we were talking about.
Yeah, turns off so many things. Denying him his transforms is the absolute way to go if you can. Like, even if you're a close guy, if you can somehow cross your way out of like a setup into some transforms or sweep a transform out of his hand, huge. Right. Just taking the extra risks or spending the extra time to be like, you know what, I think this is Anathema Surge. I'm gonna EX the cross to get the heck out of here.
Right.
As long as you don't think he has another way to get another one, like it's his second anathema surge, then he needs a chaos scissors or a reshuffle to go through his deck again. So like denying him the transforms can be really good. Eating both of your crosses, that's your way out of a lot of other things, but hard a couple of times really fast. So eat him before he eats you. It's okay if you take a lot of damage. Like, it might feel weird to take a lot of damage as a character who doesn't eat their own life, but like, it's okay for someone else to get hit back hard as long as you're hitting him even harder and actually killing him. If you're letting him get enough resources up, then you're just sitting there with less life and sad. But don't be afraid to get hit a little bit as long as you are you like big strike for big strike is kind of bad for him in the beginning because he can't afford that life loss.
Right. As long as you're making more progress on his life bar in total in the early game, you're probably doing okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Judging between, hey, is this play being a thing that he's going to get hit to get a bunch of resources? So should I try and tack it in a way, like get around it to avoid the strike, or is this a play where he's just trying to get a card to connect to get to gauge, and should I be as punishing as possible?
Right.
Because like a regular normal hit, like if he's hitting you with one normal, and you can trade, or trade up, great. That's 1 gauge versus 6 life.
A third of his life at least, probably.
Yeah, and at the end of his life, he'll probably be at 12 because it's probably realistically half because he'll probably throw chaos scissors if he can or want to.
Right.
So like a third to a half of his life for 1 gauge is not worth it for him.
Right.
It's a lot more worth it if it's a transform, but if you're able to kind of figure out based on like positioning and stuff what's normal and what's a transform, you can use your opportunities to eat him real hard when it's not going to give him as much value.
Okay, and then in the later game when he's already set up, you're in a lot more trouble, but you can still dodge that. You'll have more resources too as his opponent. You'll have your altars and stuff. You can probably try to dodge this crucial band of life where he is at his most threatening, and try to just kill him in one go. Like that's still relevant.
Yeah, you want to go faster than him. You want to rush him down faster than he can set up at the beginning, because that's how you stop him from getting online. Right. But after he's set up, you're going to want to make big strikes because little strikes will do nothing.
Sure.
Unless they ignore armor. Another thing that is good against Taisei, if it's fast enough to actually to go first, ignoring armor is doubly as painful for him because oftentimes the way you get that armor is you spend life for it. So not only do you ignore the armor, but if you spent two power for 2 life for 2 power and 2 armor, they lost the life they spent for that armor, and you ate through the armor. Right. It's doubly as expensive, and he doesn't have the life to deal with it. Right. So like a well-timed spike can be brutal.
Right. You've got your our friend Ryu here. You've got overhead. You've got ignore armor boosts. A lot of characters have extra ignore armor attacks. Look at what your character has, and that will really hurt him.
Yes. He is a quick character, so his speeds on his specials and things tend to be faster and on curve. So you're gonna have to keep that into account. That like it's got to be fast enough to hit first, right. But also if some of the things he's preparing to do, he's gonna hit you, especially early game, may not crunch, but will, like an anathema surge, early game, at range 2. It gets armor and gains life, but if you spike back at range 2, you eat through all of the armor that it gained.
Right. Okay.
So like you can eat through armor if he's trying to either go slow and hit big, or if he's trying to hit fast and then have enough armor that he doesn't care when you hit him back.
Right. Ignore armor.
Or if you can put armor on something fast.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So ignore armor, rush him down, and hit him really, really hard, not 1,000 times.
Yes. Okay. If your only method of doing it is 1,000 times, still go faster than he can, that's great. But usually if you give he's way more vulnerable before he's set up than most people, but it's stronger than most people once he's set up. So if you're not fully set up, I'd still go for the rush down rather than letting both of you, like if you have kind of the decision making option to be like, okay, I'm going to set some things up and in return give my opponent the time to set some things up of them.
Right.
Generally not a good idea.
Odds are Taisei can do more with that time than you can.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, anything else you wanted to mention, or should we wrap it up?
I I before I think that's it. I mean, there's a lot other things, different lines of play that I may be missing and other stuff, but I think for just trying to understand the gist of how to play the character, I think that covers most of it at the very least.
Oh, awesome.
So he's funky. There's a lot of numbers, so you're going to be doing a lot of math, and your opponent is going to be doing a lot of math. Just remember to keep track of things, and keep track of your counters for stuff. I recommend you have in a physical game you have tokens you can put on your
Oh,
demon heart.
on Dust to Dust, yeah, good idea.
Yeah, and same thing in a tabletop game. You get the little like stone things and put them on there. That way everybody knows that they're there. You remember that they're there, and just remember to use your abilities because you set your strike. Use your move if you want to use your move, and make sure everything is good. There's a lot of
Right,
moving
yeah.
pieces,
And
so
you're looking at a lot of individual cards to sort of remember where all the numbers are. You're like, all right, 2 armor from this, 2 power from this, 1 power from this, 1 life from this. Like you'll be doing a lot of counting.
yeah, there's a lot of counting in this murder hobo. Um, he's not a vampire, but sometimes he's the count. It's fine.
God, between that and the defenestrate don't decapitate, you are in close competition with D for just making me groan about bad jokes. Well done. Well, Coroner, this was awesome. I was really excited to learn about Taisei. You've more than exceeded my expectations. This was wonderful. I've learned so much. Thank you so much. It's been a great time talking to you.
It's been a lovely time talking to you. I always have such a good time doing these. You're really helpful with helping facilitate them. Makes it super easy.
Oh,
I
I'm so
really hope
glad.
that people enjoy. Taisei, he's my boy. He's how I learned how to play the game. It's certainly a character to pick when you're learning how to play this game.
Oh yeah.
But he's my favorite, so I really hope that people enjoy him or at least give him a shot, even if he would be only legal in like legacy tournaments. It's such a unique way of playing, and I think even if you don't end up liking to play him frequently, he can break a lot of bad habits when it comes to endgame play that I see people have on regular characters, because a lot of times you learn how not to give up. I see a lot of people give up when they get to a low enough point of life. They just are like, well, I only have 5. There's something I can do to come back from this. And even if you don't have Taisei's cockroach power, I don't think that's true on any character.
Right.
You can always come back. There is no... The only life that matters is your last life. And he'll teach you really good... he'll teach you a lot of precision because you can't make sloppy moves. And you always have the stress of being 1 strike away. So you'll learn to get a lot more... I hope people like him, but even if you don't like him, I hope people can take away lessons from like trying him out a couple of times to be more comfortable in the end game and not be sloppy or see sloppy play of people just thinking they can play 1 big card and end it because you're at low life, and then you come back.
Yeah.
Having experienced that feeling, you can translate that onto other people, and then hopefully cut out your own bad play of, oh, okay, they only have a little life and I have a lot of life. That means I can just throw things at them.
I can chill a little bit and play easier. Sure. No, that's really good advice for the entire game, not just for Taisei. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Coronair, I really appreciate the advice. Really appreciate your advocacy for this character. I'm really looking forward to trying him out in my next opportunity. I hope people at home learned something, and I hope they had fun. I will see you all for the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.